And then arises. That'll be the last thing you do.
Yellowstone, the 2-hour season premiere event, Sunday, 8/7 Central, exclusively on Paramount Network.
Life is already full of surprises, but your tuition shouldn't be one of them. While education costs rise in the U.S. every year, University of Phoenix is committed to protecting you from rising tuition costs with our tuition guarantee. We lock in your tuition so you can count on fixed, affordable tuition from the moment you enroll to the day you graduate from your program. Learn more at phoenix.edu.
NFL fans, the season is finally here. Get your picks submitted at wingam.com. Click on contest and enter the Pro Football Challenge. Weekly winners will win $20 in Frickers Fun Bucks. Get to wingam.com and get your NFL picks submitted now.
Touchdown! Incredible!
Good luck. College football playoffs, Browns, Bengals, Buckeyes, and more. Catch the Keith Byers Show Mondays at noon on 1410 ESPN Radio. We're live. We're local.
What are you gonna miss? He struck him out.
We're Dayton's ESPN radio station. Now, let's send it to the WING studios for Dayton's only local sports talk show. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, presented by Orion Sports Medicine.
All right, welcome in. Justin Kinner hanging out with you here today on a Wednesday. I'm excited for today's show. Look, this is the ultimate time of year to be a sports radio host. I mean, right now, you don't even have to work that hard for content. I mean, the content. I mean, I can't keep up with all the content that just keeps dropping in my lap all throughout the day. The college basketball season less than a week away from officially tipping off. Of course, we got plenty there. How about the Reds trading Tucker Barnhart? That news just came out less than a half hour ago. That's big news there out of Cincinnati. First college football playoff poll was released last night. And, of course, my absolute favorite thing in the world is when people say, well, the first poll doesn't matter. It's the last poll that matters. Who cares about the first poll? And then the first poll comes out and we're name calling, we're screaming, we're angry. I love it. I love it. Last night, and today is why the 12-team playoff can shove it. The 8-team playoff can shove it. The 16 playoff can shove it. The 14 playoff is the best one, and here's why. You cannot come up with a fair playoff system for an unfair format to begin with. There is no fair playoff format out there that will make sense. Because every argument that we are making for who should be at 4 and 5 and 6, and why is this team at 7, and this team's at 10, all of that will continue to exist for the teams who just barely make the playoff. We will always bicker and complain, but the teams that we bicker and complain about right now are actual championship contenders. We don't care about Oklahoma State. We don't care about the teams who are just on the outside looking in, the multiple loss teams. Do you really want to force a playoff so that Texas A&M can make it? Do you really want an expanded playoff field so that Penn State with 3 losses can get in? You guys act like if we expand the playoff, that Louisiana Tech and that, that you continue going down the list, you act like Tulane, you act like Cincinnati, you act like all these teams are just going to all of a sudden just find themselves playing for national championships if they expand the college football playoff field. That is not going to happen. This is the best way right now because at least in the 14 playoff, we are dealing with the teams that actually have a chance at winning a championship. And the teams that aren't involved in the conversation wouldn't have a chance to win a championship even if they were in the 18 playoff or the 12-team playoff. Notre Dame, they're not in the 14 playoff conversation. They would be in the 18 playoff conversation. They would be in the 12-team. Do we really need to expand the field to watch Notre Dame get their ass kicked? Really? Do we really need to see Texas A&M, a 2-loss team, competing for a 12-team playoff? Because if you think that all of a sudden a 12-team playoff means Louisiana Tech is going to get in, it's not going to happen. Like, it's just not. It means Louisiana Tech with the same resume would still be going up against a 2-loss Texas A&M team, and we will still use the same arguments of Texas A&M's resume. They have X amount of strength of schedule. That is why they will get in over a 1-loss or undefeated Louisiana Tech team. Coastal Carolina. You think Coastal Carolina is getting in a 12-team playoff? No, they wouldn't. So, again, I go through all of that to say 4 team is what it is. You're not going to change my mind. You're not going to convince me otherwise. That last night proved right there that it still generates the passion. It generates the excitement. Here's what I don't want to hear today. Let's just get this out of the way. The Bearcats did not get screwed by the committee last night. There is no way. I mean, I have heard it all. I thought the sports media in Cincinnati were going to be in tears today and last night. I mean, I was really concerned for some of the sports radio hosts in Cincinnati and the TV guys and my friends that live in Cincinnati. I mean, you would have thought that they found out the truth about Santa Claus. I'm going to whisper that just so that stays between us adults, right? Like, I mean, it was insane. Like, when the news was announced that the Bearcats weren't in the top 4, I was under the understanding that we all knew why. Like, I mean, I'm amazed at how we still keep asking these questions. How could the Bearcats not be in? How could the Bearcats not be in? So let's take a look. Here is of course, the playoff field for right now, the top 6. Georgia 1, no surprise there. Alabama is number 2. I had a problem with that yesterday. I believe that Ohio State and Alabama should have been a package deal until I really started breaking down the numbers. I shouldn't have waited until after the first playoff poll was released to start diving into the numbers and doing my homework, if you will. But I'll explain why Alabama actually does deserve to be at number 2 in a second. No, it's not because I work for an affiliate. Keep in mind, I don't actually work for ESPN. I love when you people say that. I would think someone that works for ESPN would have a better understanding of this. I don't work for ESPN, and I'm not all that intelligent. So you guys are really giving me way too much credit. Alabama actually does deserve to be at 2. I love what they did with Michigan State and Oregon. Sure, they didn't have the Buckeyes in. I would have loved to have the Buckeyes in, but you know what? The committee actually did the right thing. They rewarded Michigan State for their win over Michigan. Was that a little recency bias? Yes, because I do believe if Michigan State would have beat Michigan 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I don't think Michigan State's in the top 4, but I'm fine with them being there. They're undefeated, top-ranked team. Just beat Michigan. I mean, they're running back. They have a Heisman candidate. I mean, I'm all for Michigan State being there, but if they weren't there, I wouldn't have had a problem with it either. Oregon, I have a little small problem with them being at 4 technically, just because of the one loss and who it's against. It's not that they have a loss, it's who the loss is against, but they were rewarded for who they beat. Now, that's the key here. Everyone's being rewarded for their key victories. Yes, even Cincinnati at 6. I keep hearing Cincinnati was not rewarded, that they're ignoring the Notre Dame win. How could you look at Cincinnati's resume and think that the committee ignored the win over Notre Dame? How could you think that? The committee actually, the fact that the Bearcats, with their horrible resume, by the way, Heather Dinich tweeted out earlier in the week that if the playoffs ended today and Cincinnati made the playoff, they would have the worst resume in the history of the playoff. From strength of schedule and all the other metrics that go into it, period, Cincinnati would be the worst playoff team of all time. And by the way, one thing we can agree on, I hate the hypothetical scenarios of, well, all right, put Cincinnati, Alabama on the field, what happens? I don't believe in that notion at all. I don't like that approach. I think it's a horrible approach. I truly believe that the Bearcats' resume was rewarded for their win over Notre Dame. But you got to understand, Oregon's being at 4, Michigan State being at 3, Bama 2, and Georgia's at 1. There's no debate there. Those teams are not being just rewarded for their top victory. They're being rewarded for their whole body of work. You Bearcat fans keep forgetting that outside of that week against Notre Dame, the other weeks count too. Those weeks count too. You can't just say, well, we beat Notre Dame, we should be in the top 4. Well, that's fine. Ohio State beat Penn State. Your win is still better, but it's about the full body of work. Ohio State's full body of work kicks Cincinnati's ass. You don't have to like it. That's just the facts. It's not an opinion. It's not because I'm a Buckeye fan. I had some boob on Twitter call me a homer today. I'm like, trust me, if you guys know the history of me on radio, Buckeye fans and I have not always met eye to eye. I have never once been called a homer for the Buckeyes before until this year. And I just think that's blasphemy. I mean, Ohio State's resume is night and day different, and it's way better than Cincinnati's because it's about the full body of work. You played 8 games, and the Bearcats are screaming about their one game that they played that was worth the damn. That's the problem I have. So Georgia 1, Bama 2, Michigan State 3, and then, of course, Oregon at 4. And I love Ohio State at 5 and Cincinnati at 6. I thought it would have been wrong. I applaud the committee. I actually think the committee nailed it. Oklahoma at 8, I loved it. They punished Oklahoma because I keep hearing Bearcat fans tell me all day, well, how about Oklahoma? They only beat Tulane by 5, 40-35. They only beat Tulane by 5, and that's why they're at number 8 as an undefeated Power 5 team. I keep hearing all of this. Well, teams who are regularly in the playoff, they genuinely get the benefit of the doubt. Did Oklahoma get the benefit of the doubt? My favorite placement of a team last night was Oklahoma at 8, and I love what they did with Michigan. I love what they did with Michigan because we got to forget, too, that Michigan, yes, lost to Michigan State, and Michigan is, they pulled a Michigan. They lost a game that they should be winning. They should not let Michigan State win. They should be better than Michigan State. But the committee said, you lost a close one at East Lansing. We're not going to punish you because Michigan's full body of work is still pretty impressive compared to Cincinnati even. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show. I love the playoff poll release last night. Cincinnati at number 6 is actually generous of the committee. Folks, I went ahead and I did my homework. I don't do that often, as you guys accuse me of. I found this fascinating. Strength of schedule. You guys keep forgetting about that. You guys love to bring up, the resume-defining win. Ohio State's resume-defining win was Penn State. Coincidentally enough, and lucky for them that win happened to come right before the playoff poll was released, right? You look at Michigan State, their playoff resume caliber win was that win over Michigan. Okay, there's that. Technically, you would have said Michigan's win would have been against Washington, but again, sometimes Cincinnati has a very heavily weighted win against Notre Dame. Notre Dame was a huge win. Notre Dame is why you are at number 6. You are not being punished. You are not being punished for beating Notre Dame. You're being rewarded for being Notre Dame. You beat Notre Dame, which is why even with your horrible schedule, you are sitting at number 6. Bearcat fans, they're so wrapped up in their emotional crybaby feelings that they're not even realizing that, wow, we're number 6. Do you realize how special that is for a program like yours? You want to be treated like the big boys, but when you get dissected like the big boys, you have a problem with it. It doesn't work that way. You can't say, I want to sit at the adult table. I want to sit with Ohio State and Alabama and everybody else, but I don't want you to dissect my resume the same way you dissect Oklahoma and Ohio State and Alabama and everybody else's. Because technically, you got dissected the same exact way those Power 5 schools did, and you still don't like it. Folks, the media doesn't hate Cincinnati. If anything, did you hear how pissed off Joey Galloway and a lot of those media guys were last night? Mike Golick Jr., Jason Fitz, who we have on the show every week, Kirk Herbstreit, all those guys were bummed about Cincinnati not being in. The media loves Cincinnati. But this isn't about being a fan of the moment. The media loves Cincinnati because we media folks love good talking points. We love good, tearful, feel-good stories. We love going home at night with a tear in our eye because of a great story. And that's the Bearcats this year. That was the Dayton Flyers 2 years ago in basketball. That's the Bearcats this year. Good, feel-good stories. Now, Bearcat fans, and I don't know why you guys take offense to that, because that's what this is. It's rare. A non-Power 5 school has never been in this position. You are in this position, and you're still not happy. You guys are constantly crying, and I don't get it. So you got dissected and treated like you wanted to be a big boy. You got treated like a big boy. Okay? That's just how it works. So strength of schedule is one of the most defining factors in all of this. And if you don't believe me, it actually weighs out to make sense for these top 6 right here, for those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube. Okay? So strength of schedule. Alabama, of all of the teams in the playoff right there in your screen for top 6, Alabama has the toughest schedule of all of them. That's right. Alabama at number 2 actually makes sense. Oh, how can a one-loss Alabama team be at number 2? I was with you. I thought that was kind of strange, especially because we keep getting caught up in these optics of they lost to a 2-loss team. They are horrible. They should be punished. Well, when you have the toughest schedule of everybody in the playoff picture, for those of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and for those of you who actually know the top 6, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan State, Oregon, Ohio State, Cincinnati, Alabama has the 13th toughest schedule in the entire country. Okay. Alabama has the toughest schedule of everybody in the playoff conversation. The committee looks at your strength of schedule and says, well, they do have a loss. Yes. But when you look at the weight of everybody's full body of work, they were most likely to pick up a loss over everybody else. You guys are punishing Alabama because they're traditionally so dominant that when they do lose, you think that they're bad. And this Alabama team clearly isn't as dominant as in years past, but it's still Alabama, just like Ohio State's still Ohio State. But Kinner, why is Ohio State not at the top? I'll tell you. Ohio State has the 74th ranked strength of schedule. That's not good. So yesterday when I said Alabama and Ohio State should have been a 1-2 package, or at least should have been a package deal, that if Bama's in the top 4, Ohio State needed to be in the top 4. If Bama's out of the top 4, then Ohio State needed to be out of the top 4, because I was viewing them as traditional powers, that they were both traditional powers with one loss, and I felt like they should have both been given the benefit of the doubt because they've earned that, because they deserve it. You guys get mad at that, but the thing is, you can't sit there and punish teams for their success. Like, that's what I get tired of that in life. We get mad at people who are successful because they won't wait for us to catch up. And that's what we're doing here. You know, it's a reflection of our everyday, day-to-day lives. We hate successful people. When people are successful, we hate them. We don't take the time to dissect how they became successful or why they're successful. We're just jealous. We're mean-spirited human beings. We're horrible people. Now, there's a lot of horrible, successful people out there, too, from a personality standpoint. I'll give you that. And Alabama fans and the program itself is obnoxious as hell. I will also give you that. But at the end of the day, to sit there and punish Alabama for their greatness is kind of silly. They had the toughest schedule of anybody in the playoff hunt right now. So, of course, they have a loss. They were bound to pick up a loss when you have the hardest schedule of anybody competing in the playoffs right now. The Buckeyes, who I thought should have been a package deal with Alabama, have the second worst strength of schedule in the entire playoff landscape right now. So that's why they are sitting at 5, even with the good win against Penn State, by the way. But the loss, I know this sounds crazy, and this is what people get mad at. If you're going to lose to a good team. I believe Ohio State has the better loss. Between them and Alabama, their loss is better than Alabama's. But when you have the 74th worst strength of schedule, it kind of, you know what I mean? Like, so they were rewarded for the loss. Like, honestly, the loss to Oregon helped them, because had that Oregon game been a traditional MAC game, or just, Florida Atlantic or whoever, fill it in. I'm trying not to use, Miami of Ohio, even though I just said them. Kev always gets on me because I always use them, but put them in there. If Ohio State bludgeons them and they're undefeated, they're probably in the top 4 because they're undefeated. But if they would have picked up a loss elsewhere, they still would be kind of held. It would have been held against them. The one possession loss against the number 4 team in the playoff rankings, they weren't punished for that. They were kind of rewarded for it because their schedule's crap. Ohio State's schedule is god awful. They have the second worst strength of schedule of anybody. So I went from yesterday saying they should have been a package deal with Alabama to today saying, yeah, it makes sense. I'm fine. I like that Ohio State's not in the top 4. I don't think they deserve it now. I agree with that. See, I'm not a homer, and I'm not saying that to try to prove that I'm not a homer. I truly believe that when you look at the full body of work, because I fell into the same trap that you guys did. Cincinnati beat Notre Dame. They should be in. Well, you're forgetting they've played 8 games, and we have to look at the full body of work for those 8 games. How about Oregon? Oregon has the second toughest schedule of everybody else. So although that I don't like that Oregon is in the top 4 necessarily, what the playoff committee told us was strength of schedule matters. That's why Alabama's in with 1 loss. That's why Ohio State with 1 loss is on the outside looking in. Because why? What's the common factor? Not the 1 loss, but the strength of schedule. Alabama's strength of schedule, the toughest in all of football. They're rewarded for it because you are more likely to pick up a loss when you play a tough schedule. That's not an opinion. That's common sense. There you go. So what the committee told us last night is that strength of schedule is the number 1 factor in dissecting everyone's flaws and strengths when it comes to their resume. This isn't about taking teams with the same amount of losses and not, and comparing them and they have a loss, so they're eliminated. No, why do they have a loss? When you play tougher teams, you are more likely to pick up a loss. When you play easy teams like American Conference teams, you're more likely to be undefeated. It's that simple. So Oregon, I'm fine with them being at 4. They have the toughest schedule, second toughest schedule in the playoff field. How about Georgia? They have the 3rd toughest schedule in the playoff field. Good for them. Now, Michigan. Everyone's like, well, how does Michigan be ahead of Oklahoma? Because Michigan has the 4th toughest schedule in the college football playoff field. They come in at 44th. They have the 44th toughest schedule in the country. So Oklahoma being at 7th, or 8th, they have the 69th toughest schedule in college football. That's why. They have a horrible strength of schedule as well. Ohio State's horrible. Oklahoma's horrible. That's why Oklahoma is at 8. What did the committee tell us last night? Strength of schedule matters. It matters. And good for them. because they were consistent. You guys keep trying to find all these inaccuracies in their poll, and it's actually, if you go top to bottom, they nailed it. I did not expect to sit here today and feel good about the poll, especially with my team, the Buckeyes, being on the outside looking in, but they nailed it. You don't have to like how they go about doing it, but if they stick to their regimen of strength of schedule, they knocked it out of the park. Georgia's undefeated, clear-cut number one, no doubt there. Alabama, no problem with them being at number 2. They have the toughest schedule of anyone in the playoff field. I have no problem with them with one loss being at 2. Michigan State, as I talked about earlier, you look at them, they have that. They're the one that's in between, but I think the recency bias did come into play for them, but beating Michigan, very good win. That was their signature win. Having a Heisman candidate with the running back, I think, is key. Mel Tucker is a fantastic coach. I love the turnaround of Michigan State, but I do believe that they're the weakest of the 4. I believe they're the weakest of the 4. I do. So there's that. If there's an inaccuracy that I'm not a fan of. All right, moving on, continuing here. Well, this is where Cincinnati comes up. But Cincinnati, they beat Notre Dame. Yes, they did. Did you know that they have the worst strength of schedule in the history of the college football playoff? In the top 6, no team has had a worse strength of schedule in the history of the college football playoff. You go back to 2014 from the time that the very first playoff poll was released all the way up to today, November 3rd, 2021. No team has ever been in the top 6 that has had the worst, easiest schedule in football than the Cincinnati Bearcats. And you guys have the nerve to sit here and cry and complain? Lance McAllister in Cincinnati is just dumbfounded. I just can't figure out how the Bearcats are being disrespected. It's not that hard to figure out. Just because the easiest answer is the most common one, and we like to just discredit it. Like I hear people all the time, and don't give me this strength of schedule garbage. Why? Because that's the easiest explanation, and it totally ruins your narrative. The Bearcats did not get screwed over. If anything, the fact that they have the worst strength of schedule in the history of the college football playoff reveals they weren't punished. They were rewarded. Oh, man, I guess our win over Notre Dame means nothing. No, because you're lucky your asses played Notre Dame. Because if you didn't play Notre Dame, you wouldn't even be in the top 10. They have the 100th. I mean, they're ranked 100th in the strength of schedule. And they have the nerve to be upset. You should be happy. The committee did not punish you. They punished Oklahoma. Oklahoma is at 8. They punished Oklahoma for their narrow win against Kansas. Their come from behind, although it was a fantastic game, they still look like crap against Texas. They only beat Tulane 40-35. They were consistent. They punished Oklahoma for barely beating Tulane, just like they held Cincinnati accountable for beating Tulane. Look, the bottom line is, Bearcat fans, I'm not anti-Bearcats, but I am all about common sense. And the common sense theory here is strength of schedule. The Bearcats don't match up with anybody else. You have the 100th. You rank 100th on the strength of schedule meter. That is bad. Ohio State's is pretty bad at 74, but they at least have a win over Penn State to kind of balance it out. But guess what? You wanted to be treated like Ohio State. You got the Buckeye treatment because you're sitting there with Ohio State. It comes down between the two, Ohio schools. Ohio State has the second worst strength of schedule in the current playoff field. You were treated like the Buckeyes. You wanted to be treated like the Buckeyes. You got treated like the Buckeyes. You got held accountable for your weak-ass schedule. It's that simple. It's that simple. There is no explanation. You can call it. You can have, little bullet points of, oh, yeah, well, what about this? What about that? Strength of schedule. That's your answer. Not all good teams are equal, just like all bad teams are not equal. So when you hear people try to do this, Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, does that mean anything? Oklahoma, they barely beat Tulane, just like we did. We barely beat Tulane, and they're punishing us, and they're not punishing Oklahoma. Oh, you mean the Power 5 powerhouse that is Oklahoma, that wins their conference every year, that's pretty much in the playoff every single year, that spits out Heisman quarterbacks like nothing. I mean, they weren't punished for that. You were treated like Oklahoma. You were treated like Ohio State. You get what you ask for. You wanted to sit at the adult table. You're being treated like an adult. It is that simple. It doesn't get I just don't get it, folks. I really don't. I don't understand why you guys are getting so upset. Michigan State. Oh man, they beat Nebraska. It took overtime to beat Nebraska. Okay. They needed overtime to beat a bad Nebraska team. But their bad team is still better than your bad team. Beating Nebraska in overtime is still more impressive than beating Navy in a full 4-quarter, 1-possession game. And the Navy game could have been forgiven had you followed it up with an ass whooping against Tulane. It's not that hard. 518-1410. 518-1410. Just keep that in mind. I don't want to hear scenarios of, well, how come Michigan State's not punished for their, needing overtime to beat Penn State, Nebraska? Who says they weren't punished? Maybe they could have been ranked number 2. Oregon, they beat Cal in a 1-possession game. How come they're not being punished? How do you know that that's not? How come maybe Oregon, if they blew out California, maybe they'd be at 3? How do you know that being at 4 is not the committee slapping them on the wrist for that 1-possession win against Cal? They're at 4 because they're being rewarded for their win. And whether you want to believe it or not, Cincinnati, they're being rewarded for their win against Notre Dame. 518-1410. Let's continue this conversation, this time with you guys. We'll be back in just a moment.
Listen, stream, watch. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
November is an ideal month to plant trees in Ohio because the soil is still warm, which reduces the transplant stress. Plus, trees require less water in November than in the heat of the summer, allowing roots to grow in the cooler temperatures. When planting trees, keep these tips in mind. Select trees that are zone hardy for where you plan to plant. Avoid planting trees that produce slip hazards, like fruits and nuts close to sidewalks. And don't plant large trees near or under utility lines. To learn more about the November tree planting, contact an ISA-certified arborist near you by going to trees4ohio.org. That's trees4ohio.org.
From city streets to back roads, from road warrior to carpooler, there are some things you can always count on, like the reliability, durability, and power of DieHard, America's most trusted auto battery. No matter where your journey takes you, count on DieHard to get you started on the road ahead. Available at your local Advance Auto Parts and participating CarQuest stores.
College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byers here to tell you about OGW Energy Resources. If you own a home or a business and want to save money, then going solar with OGW Energy Resources is the way to go. OGW Energy Resources have been helping the Miami Valley save money by going solar for over 14 years. There is no better time than now to look into going solar. For more information, check out their website at ogwenergyresources.com. Go solar today. OGW Energy Resources. Your energy, your future. Control it.
Attention Class A CDL drivers. Looking to be more than just a number? Yoel Transportation in Dayton is looking for drivers with at least 1.5 years experience. Yoel has open positions for no-tarp flatbed drivers and no-touch regional or local van drivers. Yoel is ELD compliant and offers 401k with match, medical, dental, vision, holiday pay, vacation, safety bonuses, and now has a rider policy. Call Rick or Joe at 937-294-5933 and ask about the $5,000 sign-on bonus today.
And we are all tied up in the bottom of the ninth. Bases loaded. Electric in here. Electric. It all comes down to this pitch. You throw the fastball here. But it looks like Brock is walking off the field and is leaving the stadium. What is going on here? I'm getting word that he left to get a taco.
When you need a taco, you need a taco. Introducing the new Cantina Crispy Melt Taco, only from Taco Bell. At participating U.S. locations for a limited time only.
Did you know that you might be overpaying for your prescriptions? It's okay, because there's an easy, convenient solution. Check GoodRx. GoodRx lets you compare prices at different pharmacies and shows you where to get the lowest price. Here's Joe, a doctor and GoodRx customer.
I was able to look up some medicines that I was going to get, and it saved me a good amount of money.
GoodRx is helping millions of people, and it can help you too. For simple, smart savings, check GoodRx. GoodRx is not insurance. In 2020, GoodRx users saved an average of 79% off retail prices. Individual compensated for their time. Visit GoodRx.com/radio to learn more.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance so you only pay for what you need. Liberty, 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 liberty.
Hi, my name is Ted, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Peppermint Chip Shake is when the peppermint shake is available, that's to me sort of announces that the holiday season is here. I guess most people count down the days until Christmas, but me, I count down the days until the shake comes out.
Hi, I'm Michaela, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Peppermint Chip Milkshake is that first sip when you taste the peppermint chip pieces, it's like catching snowflakes on your tongue.
Share a peppermint chip milkshake from Chick-fil-A this holiday. Available for a limited time. Real guests paid for their testimonials.
You know when you order a new video game, or a golf club, or a blender, and then it arrives at your door, you get a little thrill. Imagine how much more thrilling it is when you order a new car. With Nissan at home, you can shop for the perfect ride and order it without ever having to go anywhere. Sure beats a golf club or a blender. Buy a new car entirely online with Nissan at home, delivered direct from dealer to driveway. Thrill starts here. Services may vary at participating dealers, subject to applicable law. See dealer for details.
Hey everybody, it's Stephen A. Smith, and everyone knows my feelings on Cowboys fans. But really, Justin Kenner, you're a Cowboys fan and a Browns fan? Good Lord have mercy. I don't know what the hell to do with y'all. I really don't.
It's the Justin Kenner Show with Kev Nash. Weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Welcome back. Justin Kenner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, the Justin Kenner Show, brought to you by OGW Energy Resources, Orion Sports Medicine, and now Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. We appreciate all of our sponsors that help us put on this show each and every day. Some of y'all love me, some of y'all hate me, which is totally okay. I just appreciate that y'all hang out with me weekdays from 3 to 6. Kev Nash out today. He will be back tomorrow. I can't believe he's off today. This is a great day to be on the air, right? I love the college football playoff. I really do. I know it brings out a lot of anger. I joked earlier that, fans crack me up because they try. It's like when they tweet and put things on Facebook, it's almost like they're trying to convince themselves of this. Like, oh, but the first poll doesn't matter. Who cares? Who cares about the first poll, right? The first poll means nothing. It doesn't matter how you start, it's how you finish. And then the first poll comes out after all of that, rah talk. The first poll comes out and we're flipping tables and throwing stuff and losing friends and, calling family members names. And we're just, we throw temper tantrums. It's unbelievable. I do look, Bearcat fans. I've been a little cutthroat today. I thought, I tweeted this out earlier, and some fans just are too sensitive to be able to decipher this message. I was amazed at how many UD basketball fans were actually anti-Bearcats last night. And by the way, I agreed with the Bearcat fan or with the UD fan last night that were tweeting out things about the Bearcats not deserving to be in the top 4 and yada, yada, yada. But it's amazing to me because a lot of the things that we say about the Bearcats, they're small. They're a smaller school than the big boys. What would they look like against the big boys? What if they actually played a big boy schedule? All of those things, if you recall, like when Desmond Ritter's name gets brought up for Heisman conversations and stuff, it's like, oh, well, it's easy to look like a Heisman candidate when you go up against Navy and you go up against Tulane and Tulsa and all that. We do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm having flashbacks to 2020 when the Dayton Flyers were making their run. Now, UD fans got mad at me for posting this today. I know I've been known to maybe try to position a post to get a reaction. That's not what this was. It was like, if you can't see the parallels here, then you're one of the dumbest basketball fans I've ever met in my life. All right. I don't understand how you guys can't comprehend the parallels here. Like, if you're really trying to break it down and try to explain how they're different, then you're trying too hard. But the parallels are there. Two teams that aren't your traditional big boys that are going blow for blow with the big boys, right? So I was amazed that the UD fan base didn't have more sympathy for the Bearcat fan base, because the Bearcat fan base is going through what Flyers fans had to go through a few years ago. But the difference is Flyers, it's a different sport. College basketball, 68 teams. Had COVID not ruined everybody's life, we would have had a chance to see how that story would have ended. So that's where the parallel technically stops. But I do think that, I think we here know better than anybody in this city what it's like to be told, what it's like to experience one of our teams be a story, a national storyline. The Bearcats football, they're never a national story. They are a national story. Dayton basketball, although they've had their ups and their ups and downs as far as the national attention they get, they're never the national story. But thanks to Obi Toppin and the 2020 run, Anthony Grant, national coach of the year and everything, they were. But that's not who Dayton usually is. Not saying they can't get to that and sustain that, but that's not the reason that was such a story, is because it was just unheard of. There's a reason game day is going to Cincinnati this week. It's because it's like, well, we never know. I mean, this may be the last time Cincinnati's ever, at this level. We don't know when the next time UC will be so good that we can bring game day there and actually people believe that this is an actual contending team. Same reason why game day came to Dayton a few years ago. They, and I forgot, I mean, they weren't even playing a good team. It was the last game of the regular season. It was the last game of the A-10 season before the conference tournament at Barclays. Of course, that got called off due to COVID. But game day knew there was bigger games that day, Duke and everything else, North Carolina. And they picked Dayton because in their heads are like, Dayton has a fantastic fan base. The atmosphere is freaking believable. It rivals Duke and every other top program out there. But game day knew that we don't know if Dayton will ever get back to this level of relevance again nationally. Okay, they're always relevant to us here locally. They're relevant within their conference. They're relevant within certain regions, but they're not. UD is not relevant nationally. That's not a shot. That's the reality of it. UC football is never relevant nationally. They are right now, and that's why game day is coming to Cincinnati to take advantage of this great storyline. And that's all it is. But I'm just amazed at how many Flyer fans can't sympathize with UC. And for those of you Flyers fans who do, then this isn't really about you. But I was amazed. I was circling. I got to like 15 different names last night of diehard UD fans that I know that I'm like, I can't believe you guys are actually like everything you sound like hypocrites. Everything you're saying about the Bearcats could have easily been said about the Flyers back in 2020. But anyways, the poll came out last night. Unbelievable. Bearcats come in at 6. I'm really not surprised. Okay, I'm not surprised. I talked about the importance of strength of schedule. And Nick on Facebook brought up a good point that, the problem with the committee is that they move the goalposts of, they move the criteria around every year. This year, the clear criteria is the strength of schedule. That's the base. They start at the base. The base is strength of schedule. And from there, they start looking at, okay, strength of schedule, boom. Then they look at who has the best wins. Then they look at who has the worst losses. Then they look at who of the wins, how many of those wins were ugly wins, how many teams covered, how many teams didn't cover, and everything else. Like, they dissected everything. I actually am really impressed with the committee's decisions here. I don't think they made a bad decision. I think you could question Oklahoma at 8, although I love that they put Oklahoma at 8. As I talked about earlier, the strength of schedule, Oklahoma has the 69th. They're ranked 69th in strength of schedule. That's right down at the bottom with Ohio State and Cincinnati, who, as I talked about earlier, Cincinnati finishing at 6th, they have the worst strength of schedule in the history of the college football playoff reveal. No team, and we're talking about every poll that's ever been released, from the final poll to the first poll from the time that it started back in 2014, no team has ever had a worse strength of schedule than the Bearcats. That's relevant. That means something. That's a talking point. Just because it's a talking point you don't want to talk about, it doesn't mean that it's not a factor in this. But Nick, I agree. The problem with the committee is every year they seem to have a different set of rules that they are basing their criteria off of. But regardless of that, that doesn't change. Like, we could sit here and complain about that, but that's not going to change the direction that the committee is going in. The committee is going in the direction of the base being the strength of schedule. Cincinnati has the worst strength of schedule of all the teams in the running right now for the playoff. Ohio State, they're at 74th. That's the second worst playoff strength of schedule right now. So, and they were kind of held accountable for it. I said yesterday, to recap before we get to the phones, Ohio State, Alabama, 2 traditional powers, both with a loss. Texas A&M losing at Texas A&M, and then Ohio State losing at home against Oregon. Both have decent losses. I mean, Alabama has the toughest strength of schedule in all of football, of all the playoff field, I mean. So that's why they were kind of forgiven for their loss against Texas A&M, because common sense tells you when you are the team that is playing the most difficult stretch of games, you are more likely to lose than everybody else. And that's what happened. They stubbed their toe. You're more likely to stub your toe when you have Alabama's run. I'm not making that's not an opinion. That's just common sense. I mean, you got to understand that. So for the Bearcats, who are screaming about their win against Notre Dame, you were rewarded for the win against Notre Dame by being 6th. Because if you take Notre Dame off the resume, it's horrible. It's a horrible resume. The fact that you have the fact that you're ranked at 100th on the strength of schedule meter with Notre Dame shows you just how bad that schedule is, folks. Like Ohio State, they have Oregon, who's ranked 4th right now. They have Penn State, all right? Indiana was supposed to be better, but they weren't. Ohio State played like dog crap against Tulsa. But when they play like dog crap against Tulsa, you still win by 21 plus points. When Cincinnati plays poorly, they held on for a one-possession 27-20 win against Akron, or against Army, or Navy. Jesus, let's just go through all of them, right? But you see what I'm saying. And then Tulane, I think it was a mix. I think the committee could have forgiven the one-possession win against Navy a few weeks ago if they didn't follow it up with the poor outing against Tulane that they pulled away from late. But like Cincinnati, you can't be mad. You were rewarded for your Notre Dame win. You were not punished. I think you were placed pretty fairly, to be honest. There's nothing you could do about it. It's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of it. But you can't sit there and say, man, this is so unfair to the mid-majors. Well, you know what's unfair to the Power Fives? What's unfair to the Power Fives is that you have to play good team after good team after good team every week while they play nobody. Like, that's also not fair to the Power Fives. And I know we are not conditioned to sympathize with the Power Fives. Oh, poor Power Fives. But you guys, that's kind of crazy to sit here and let's reward Louisiana Tech. Let's reward Coastal Carolina. Let's reward Cincinnati for struggling through the worst strength of schedules in football and then ignore the fact that, well, maybe Ohio State has a loss because they actually play somebody. And even the nobodies they play, the nobodies are still better than the nobodies that Cincinnati plays. And folks, that's not my opinion. That's a fact. Ohio State's strength of schedule better than Cincinnati's. So there's that. And by the way, I do not buy into the, well, if you put Cincinnati on the field with Alabama today, who wins? I don't care about that. This isn't about that. This is about what you have done this season, not about the history of the committee's decisions in years past, not about what teams did last year or the year before. This is strictly about this year. And I love what they did to Oklahoma. A Bearcat fan got mad at me on Twitter earlier today. Oh, yeah? What about Oklahoma? They only beat Tulane 40-35. Yep, and Oklahoma is undefeated. They're a regular in the playoff. They regularly have Heisman-winning quarterbacks. They have one of the best coaches in college football. They're at 8th. They were held accountable for not winning pretty. They beat Tulane. They didn't win pretty. Okay, we can maybe overlook that. It was early in the season. Oh, yeah, you look like crap against a multiple-loss Texas team. Sure, you won. It was a great game, but we still got to hold you accountable for barely holding on to beat a bad Texas team. Okay, you follow it up with another horrible outing of playing bad football for 3.5 quarters against Kansas. Sure, you pulled away and won big, but you look like crap against Kansas. Oklahoma got held accountable. Ohio State was held accountable. Cincinnati was held accountable. Oregon was rewarded for beating Ohio State. Good for them. Oh, but they have a loss. Yes, they did. But their strength of schedule, as I talked about, they have the second toughest strength of schedule in the playoff field. So it balances out. Best win of the playoff resumes, bad loss, but the strength of schedule balanced it out. That's why they're at 4. 518-1410 to the phones we go. Let's go to Jeff. Jeff, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Justin. I just have one question for you about the whole college football poll.
Yep.
Last year, Cincinnati played Georgia really, really tough and barely lost against them last year and stuff like that. And Georgia returned 80% of their starters last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, would you not consider that? Anywhere, especially with Georgia being number 1 right now, as part of possibly being able to compete with the big dogs?
Look, and with all, I don't think this is about wondering if they can compete. And by the way, they proved last year they can't compete with the big dogs. But the playoff, it's about they say it's about the 4 best teams, but it's always about the 4 best resumes. And Cincinnati might have a team that can compete with those guys, but right now the resume is not really up to par with everyone else's. If you actually look at the resumes from strength of schedule, from strength of wins and everything else, I actually believe the committee did them a favor. I'm not bearing Cincinnati. I'm not anti-Bearcat here, I promise. But when I really started looking at everything, I'm like, they actually did Cincinnati a favor by putting them at 6, because they could have justified putting them at 9, 10, or even 11 if they've really wanted to. I still think they were rewarded pretty heavily. But I agree with you. I do think that they've proven they can hang with Georgia. Could they do it again this year? Georgia's a year older, a year wiser, but so is Cincinnati, to your point. Can they hang with Bama? I don't know. No one gave them a chance against Georgia, and they hung with Georgia last year. So I think that there's always that, but I don't think that the committee's thinking that way. The committee is saying, hey, this is about this year's resume only.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, but everybody keeps saying that, well, it's like favoritism, what they've done in the past and all that good stuff. But everybody says the bias. With oh, well, it's always Georgia. It's always Alabama. Look what they did last year. Look what they're doing this year. Oh, look, they got the top recruiting class and stuff like that. Everybody seems to throw that out there, but it's just like, well, why can't, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a Bearcats fan. I'm a Michigan fan.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, from Dayton, Ohio and everything else, I'm looking at the fact
it's an interesting storyline. Yeah.
You want to pull for them, but yet you also look at, I mean, Georgia returned 80% of their people from last year, and look how well Cincinnati played against Georgia, and look at what Georgia's doing this year.
But you got to be careful with using the eye test against Georgia, because we can't just use the eye test for how they looked against Georgia last year, but then ignore the eye test of how they've looked against Navy and Tulane and teams, and even Indiana, who they beat Indiana. But I mean, it was punch for punch back and forth. They didn't dominate Indiana the way other teams have. So again, I'm not trying to counter everything with discrediting what you're saying, but it's like, I think the same way you do, but then I'm like, well, man, we got to be careful with wanting the eye test examination, because then we have to do the eye test examination with every team on their schedule. They've played 8 games. It's not just about the one bowl game last year or the one game against Notre Dame this year.
I just got one more question for you that I want to ask you.
No problem.
And I'll get off the line. How come every time I listen to like national sports radio and everything else, especially like Keith Byers, when they say that any given Sunday, any team can beat anybody, but yet when it comes down to like a Cincinnati or like a UCF or whatever, that never ever comes up for them to want to be able to allow them to compete against the big boys?
You're asking,
haven't they earned the right?
I mean, again, when you have the 100, I mean, their strength of schedule's at 100. That's really what this comes down to. It's like they have the easier, like they're taking the easier path to get there. And it's like, it's easier to be looked at as great at undefeated when you play literally nobody outside of Notre Dame. Now you could say, well, Notre Dame's better than Ohio State's best win, but it's not about the one win versus the one win. It's about the full body of work. By the way, yes, Cincinnati could potentially beat anybody in front of them. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but we can't get to talking about that without talking about what it takes to get there. And what it takes to get there, we have to analyze all of that before we can start breaking down what matchups are more intriguing in the playoff.
All right. I appreciate your time today, Justin. Thank you very much.
Take care, Jeff. Appreciate you. 518-1410. Like, and again, I'm not against everything that Jeff just said, but you do have to look at this and say, okay, well, you know, could Cincinnati hang with these teams? That's not the point. To be honest, Texas A&M, like, we got to be careful with what excuses we want to use to justify their existence in the playoff, because, well, I'm pretty sure Cincinnati could hang with those teams. Well, let's put Texas A&M at 5 or 6 then, because they've already proven that they could beat Alabama at number 2. So we got to be careful with that. We got to be careful with the eye test shows that they did pretty well against Georgia in the bowl game last year. Okay, well, we can't just have an eye test for Georgia, and we can't just have an eye test for Notre Dame, but then we don't have a full eye test for the Navies and the Tulanes of the world. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, hey, only analyze this on this. I mean, that would be like in college if I told my professors, hey, of the 15 projects I turned in, can you only count the grades that I got that were above a B, please? Like that, or a C? All right. I know I have 7 D's and 7 F's in here, but if you don't mind, can you just grade me off of my C's, B's, and A's? I would really appreciate it. Like, it doesn't work that way. You are getting graded for your full body of work. You're not, I mean, and some professors were really nice. Like, they'll tell you, hey, we're going to drop your lowest grade. Okay, well, if you drop the Cincinnati Bearcats' lowest, graded performance, they're still the worst team strength of schedule wise in football. That's all. Like, I'm not anti-Bearcat here. This isn't going to be a full show of me saying I think the Bearcats suck because I just feel like they suck. I mean, the numbers are showing that they don't suck, but their resume is not great. Because the playoff has never been about the 4 best teams. It's always been about the 4 best resumes. And that's working against the Bearcats. And to be honest, if we're talking about the 4 best teams, that also works against the Bearcats at the same time. 518-1410. And Don Roberts on Facebook says that it should just be a Power 5 championship because strength of schedule are never going to change for mid-majors. And that's what I said earlier, Don. That this whole let's expand the playoff thing because a 4 team isn't fair. 6 teams isn't fair either. 8 teams isn't fair. 12 teams isn't fair. It's not fair. You're right. But it's not the playoff that's not fair. You can't create, like, the whole system of college football and athletics as a whole is not fair. The fact that Wright State University basketball is D1 and so is Duke, but yet there is nothing about Duke and Wright State that resemble them both being under the D1 umbrella. And that's not a shot at Wright State. They know they're not Duke, right? Dayton's not Duke. Like, that's the thing too. Dayton's a D1 school, so is Duke. Let's take a look at both of them. They don't match. They don't. There's no overlap there. None. From the talent, from the resources, although I absolutely love UD Arena and I love the resources that those athletes have at UD Arena, it's not Duke. That's not a shot at UD. It's just I'm trying to show you the difference between the bottom of the D1 barrel and the top of the D1 barrel. And with UD being right there in the middle of the D1 barrel, the gap is still beyond wide when it comes to college basketball. Football, it's even worse. So I don't want to hear about, oh, let's create a fair playoffs. There's no such thing as a fair playoff system. And by the way, why are we so worried about the Louisiana? Like, what makes Louisiana Tech and Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina special? And what makes Bowling Green and Miami of Ohio and MAC schools not special? Why aren't we trying to expand the field to include them too? Why is it we only feel bad for Coastal Carolina? Why is it we only feel bad for UCF and Cincinnati? Oh man, this was rigged. It was never set up for them to have success. Well, why is it that those are the groups of the D1s that you're worried about? Why aren't you worried about the Bowling Greens and the Miami of Ohio's of the world? And the Toledos? Like, why? So that if you can answer that, like everyone, you are dead wrong about expanding the playoff field to make it fair. If you want to expand the playoff field because you want to see great games on New Year's Day and all that stuff, that's your only argument. But if your argument is, man, this isn't fair for Cincinnati, they need to expand the playoff field. Do you think that the same arguments that are keeping Cincinnati out of the 14 playoff won't exist for a 6, an 8, or a 12? No, they would most likely get in for an 8 or a 12. But do you see how far back we have to open it up to allow them in? And no, it's nothing to do with it's not fair. It's also not fair to the Power Fives who have to face tougher teams on a week in, week out basis. Like, what are we saying? That it's okay to let Cincinnati in who doesn't play anybody? And that we're going to judge them off their wins and judge the other teams off the losses, who the only reason they have losses is because they play tougher teams? And then heaven forbid that during Cincinnati's easy cakewalk schedule that they don't blow out Navy, their fan base has to cry and complain and say, well, we won and that's all that matters. That is not all that matters. You don't get to make the rules. The rules are the rules. You have to follow those rules. And sitting here and complaining about them is not going to make the committees. You know what? You're right. Bearcats, you only beat Navy by 1 possession. You barely beat Tulane, but you know what? We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Oh, Ohio State, you lost by 1 possession to the number 4 team in the country. Clearly, you are horrible, so we're not going to give you the benefit. No, it doesn't work that way. And it's not about the one game, folks. It's about the week in, week out. Remember, 8 games have been played, and all I keep hearing Bearcat fans chirp about is the 1 win against Notre Dame. And you want to bring up Oklahoma's 40-35 win over Tulane? That's super. Okay, that's great. They were punished for it. They were punished for Kansas. They were punished for the Texas game, even with wins. That's why they're at 8. Cincinnati, you're not being treated misfairly. We got to stop doing this. Oh, woe is the Bearcats. The Bearcats are actually, whether you believe it or not, the Bearcats are actually being rewarded. They are. They are being rewarded. There is not, like, the Bearcats are not being treated unfairly at all. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Mine is Kev Nash today. He'll be back. I see we have Tim. Tim, you'll be our first caller on the other side. We have Eric, Michael, and Tyler. Phone lines, we do have 2 more open. Give us a call. 518-1410. We'll go right to you guys on the other side. I love the playoff discussion, but I do not believe, not for one little tiny bit, that the Bearcats were disrespected last night. And I would love, I just don't get how. And I get it. There's people out there that are like, well, it's not fair for the Bearcats. There's nothing that they can do. Well, don't get mad at the playoff committee for that, because they can't ignore the fact that other teams are playing tougher schedules. That matters. That should matter. Oh, but winning matters. Well, when not everyone's playing on a level playing field, we can't. And by the way, this is why college basketball gets it right. We hear every year about, oh, well, these mid-major teams. How about this team that won 30 games and they didn't even make the tournament? Well, who do they play? I'm a big Wright State basketball fan. But I do know that if they win 30 basketball games, they're still not getting an at-large bid. Where are the people then that say, well, winning matters? What do you UD fans say about Wright State? Well, who do they play? You know how you guys are with your nose way up in the air, you snobby people, oh, well, Wright State, they won 30 games, but who do they play? What would they do in the A-10? Well, blah, blah, blah. You snobby people, you see? It's the same thing. You don't like when your logic is used against you, and that's what this is. 518-1410. More of the Justin Kinner Show. Hour 2 coming up next.
In college football, Goodyear knows a new season means new possibilities, where every Saturday is an opportunity on the road to greatness. No matter if you're out there playing your hardest or cheering the loudest from the sidelines, tailgating in the parking lot, or your favorite spot to watch the game, Goodyear knows passion is what drives us forward all the way to the playoffs. That's the road that moves us. Goodyear, more driven.
5G is here, but the big carriers want you to sign a pricey long-term contract to get in on the action. Well, no more, because Straight Talk Wireless has rolled out 5G coverage nationwide, with plans starting at just $35 a month with no contract. And get a Samsung Galaxy A32 5G for only $299, all on America's best networks. 5G coverage, 5G phones, less money. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. 5G capable device required, actual availability, coverage, and speed may vary.
You know a spot, but not just a spot, the spot. Actually, with the all-new Nissan Frontier, you know a bunch of them. But the key to these great spots? Being able to reach them in the first place. Your spot is out there. Find your Frontier in the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier with standard 310 horsepower, advanced tech, and 281 pound-foot of torque.
Happy holidays don't just happen on their own. You make them happen with a little help from new appliances at the Home Depot. Because warm wishes won't roast that turkey. You'll want a new convection oven for that. An air fryer will help make the season light and delicious. And while you're at it, consider a new LG or Samsung fridge that's big enough to hold all kinds of Christmas cheer. Make the holidays yours with the season's best savings on top appliances at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
When getting the job done right is job one, you need construction equipment that's built right. From compact track loaders to the world's #1 selling compact excavator, the Kubota construction lineup features durable Kubota engines, more comfort, and the versatility to do it all and do it right. Visit your local Kubota dealer today. Go to KubotaUSA.com for full disclaimer.
See Columbus Equipment Company, 7570 New Carlisle Pike in Dayton.
Hi, this is Paul Keels, voice of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Keep your home comfort system running smoothly and efficiently with regular checkups from Butler Heating and Air Conditioning. Butler has been proudly serving the Miami Valley since 1949. Don't wait until your equipment breaks. Call Butler today at 937-253-8871. That's 937-253-8871. Go Butler and go Bucks.
Mucinex DM's bilayer tablet allows for immediate and extended release, relieving both wet and dry coughs and loosening chest congestion for 12 long hours. Grab Mucinex DM, available at Walgreens.
You want more local content from Dayton's ESPN radio station 1410 Wing AM? Make sure you subscribe to the WING 1410 Dayton YouTube channel, where you can watch all your local shows live or go back and rewatch previous episodes of the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, the Keith Byers Show, Talking Out Loud with Sully, and more. WING 1410 Dayton. Dayton's ESPN radio. We're live. We're local.
What are you gonna miss? He struck him up.
We're Dayton's ESPN radio station. Now, let's send it to the WING studios for Dayton's only local sports talk show. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, presented by Orion Sports Medicine.
Hour 2, we welcome you back. College football playoff reveal last night. The first rankings released for the 2021 college football playoff. Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Michigan State 3, Oregon 4, and then the state of Ohio sitting on the outside looking in. Ohio State number 5 and the Bearcats at number 6. Mike Haywood on Facebook says, Kinner, also strength of schedule is fluid, right? So Ohio State will be way higher with the finish of the schedule. Again, this is the thing with the weekly release. Everything's about your resume to this point. So I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because of this right here. So the strength of schedule, as we talked about, Alabama has the toughest strength of schedule of all the teams in the college football playoff hunt, and that includes Georgia. Georgia has the third most difficult schedule in college football amongst the teams eligible for the playoff as of right now. Oregon has the second toughest. Michigan actually has the fourth toughest. Michigan State fifth. Oklahoma comes in at sixth, but Oklahoma also has the 69th most difficult schedule. So that's not a difficult schedule, which is why they were held accountable. The Buckeyes have the 74th, easiest schedule in football, which is that's a very easy schedule. It's not a difficult schedule. I'm sorry. Cincinnati is ranked 100th. Cincinnati does not have a difficult schedule at all. In fact, as I stated earlier, for those of you who have not been tuning in, that right now, when they were revealed as number 6 last night, that was the worst strength of schedule ranked team ever in the history of the playoff, and this is year 7. So the Bearcats are being given the benefit of the doubt. Instead of crying victim, be appreciative of the fact that they are being included in the mix with teams that they don't have any business technically being there. From a talent perspective, absolutely they do, which the committee is acknowledging that they have a very good quarterback. All the line was questionable coming in. They've played solid, one of the best defenses in college football statistically. So look, they're being rewarded, and all you guys keep focusing on is the fact that, we're not being treated like everybody. You are being treated like everybody else. So you talked about the strength of schedule, how it's fluid, how Ohio State's strength of schedule will actually kind of even up by the end of the year. I'm glad you brought that up because that's the strength of schedule to this point. Here's the strength of schedule for the remaining games. Okay. Michigan State has the most difficult schedule remaining moving forward. Okay. So they're in good shape. Like Michigan State could technically, because of that, maybe, depending on what kind of loss, like if they lose by a field goal against Ohio State, not guaranteeing they get in, but if it comes down to Michigan State with the toughest schedule remaining, losing by 1 to Ohio State, who knows? If it goes between that and Cincinnati, as we've seen, the strength of schedule matters. I could see the nod going to a 1-loss Michigan State team, right or wrong. That's just the reality of it. Alabama, they have when I say the toughest schedule remaining, they have the toughest schedule remaining of the teams in the playoff. Just to clarify, Michigan State actually has the 7th toughest remaining schedule moving forward. Alabama has the 8th toughest schedule moving forward, but the 2nd toughest amongst the teams in the playoff. Ohio State goes from having the 2nd to worst toughest schedule, the easiest schedule, to having the 3rd toughest schedule in football moving forward, behind Michigan State and Alabama. Cincinnati, they have, right now, strength of schedule wise, they're ranked 100. The strength of schedule moving forward for the remaining games, they're ranked 81st. It's not going to get better. It's not. So Bearcats, I keep seeing fans say, well, what do they have to do? What do they have to do? They need to do their job. And that's to win and win big. Beating Navy, everyone's like, oh, well, they should be rewarded for winning. They are. That's why they're still in the playoff hunt. I don't know why you guys keep thinking that they're not being rewarded for winning. They are, but they're also being held accountable for not looking like a top 6 team. They're lucky they're top 6. They shouldn't be. Joey Galloway was so upset last night. Lance McAllister is just livid in Cincinnati. I'm just like, what is wrong? I get it. Everyone can have an opinion, but it's one thing to have an opinion. But when you get the facts put in front of you, how you could still look at this and say, oh no, they're still being screwed. They're not being screwed. You cannot look at the Bearcats, who are ranked 100th in strength of schedule. You can't look at that and say that they're still being screwed. That's not the case, especially when Alabama, who has 1 loss, they have 1 loss because they have the toughest schedule in all of college football playoff contenders. There's a reason they have a loss. They play tougher teams. They're more likely to lose. Doesn't mean that they have to lose. They're just more likely to, which the committee puts that into consideration. But yeah, so Cincinnati had the worst schedule of all the teams to this point, to the first reveal of the playoff bracket, and they have the worst schedule of anyone remaining moving forward. It's not a secret. But Ohio State goes from the 2nd to worst schedule, to this point, to having the 3rd toughest schedule moving forward. But yeah, when people say, the SEC, it's overrated, it's blah, blah, blah. Well, the bottom line is the strength of schedule metrics show that that's the toughest conference It just is. There's no way around it. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. That's what the numbers show. And I know we can make numbers sing and dance all we want, but this one's a pretty easy one. Strength of schedule. I mean, the Alabama and the SEC, strength of schedule, that matters. The Big Ten is very, very good. There's a reason Michigan State has the toughest schedule remaining moving forward because they just played Michigan, right? They still have to play Ohio State, right? Like, they would have to play, a top 25 team in the Big Ten championship. Like, they have their work cut out for them too. They have tough games moving forward as well, so it is what it is. 518-1410. Let's go to Tim. Tim, are you still there?
Hey, what's up, man?
How are you? Thanks for being patient with me, man.
I'm doing well. Hey, no problem. Just a few things real quick. I'm loving the college football playoff talk here. Just a few things. Let me point out, first of all, that I am a diehard Notre Dame fan, and Cincinnati fans are making an argument probably more suitable for Wake Forest right now. You're making an argument. If you get what you want, you're going to surge Wake Forest ahead of you because they're in a Power 5 conference. That's number one. Number two is, yes, they beat Notre Dame. I'm not making any excuses. They deserved the win. They got it. But let's look at the facts. Opening drive, we throw an interception in their end zone. Completely terrible interception on Jack Cohn's part. And then after Cincinnati's first touchdown, we muffed the kickoff. He didn't get hit and fumbled it. When was the last time you saw a muffed kickoff in football? I mean, they gifted him that game, but they deserved it. They got the win. They deserve it. Now, here's what I will say. Michigan State. Michigan and Michigan State have been irrelevant in the college football playoff picture or landscape for the last several years. Now, all of a sudden, they play each other. They're both, 7-0, whatever they were. They hadn't beaten anybody. Michigan State won that game because they had the best player on the field in that running back. And I think he's one of the best players in the entire country. But Michigan State's offense is very one-dimensional. If they get what they want and they get into that playoffs, trust me, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I like to see my team do well. Sitting at number 10 right now is perfectly fine with me. We have no business going up against Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State. We have no business, and I don't want to see that. I want to see us play a good bowl game against a good team and get a respectable win, rebuild, go into next year. Michigan State fans, they're happy where they're sitting. They're going to get exposed if they beat Ohio State. If they finish out the season undefeated and go into the playoffs, they got killed a few years ago in the playoffs against Alabama. That Michigan State team was way better than this one. They're very one-dimensional on offense, and I'm sorry. I know we look at things at how they are this year. Well, we're going to do strength of schedule this year. I get that. I understand that. You're forming a committee. You're basing your opinion on what your body of work is right now. But Michigan State has been terrible for several years now. I'm sorry. I understand. They do got a running back that will help them be a much more competitive, better team. I get that. But to all of a sudden go from a team who couldn't win but 4 or 5 games to be a college football playoff team, no, sir. You won against bad teams. Last week before the game, my wife was like, well, we're going to see who's for real. No, we're not. No, we're not. They both played bad teams, and one of them's going to win. I think Michigan State was a result. Michigan State was a result of recency bias. I don't know if you caught earlier in the show. I said that the only one that it's not adding up. Michigan State's the only team that is not adding up from the metric standpoint. Like, I don't have a problem with them being there, but I do think that, like, when you look at the strength of schedule and the quality of wins, it's not. I mean, they're ranked at number 50 in strength of schedule, which is right there in the middle, and their best wins against Michigan, which is a solid win. But I think that's more of a recency thing. I think because Mel Tucker's a feel-good story, Michigan State, they're coming back. They got the running back. Yep. I think that's really they're the only ones I have a question mark about. As far as the strength of schedule goes, and I'll repeat myself, I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. I know about strength of schedules. I get you're making a point, and I think you're right with your point. But here's the problem with the whole strength of schedule. The strength of schedule at the beginning of the season and the strength of schedule at the end of the season are two totally different things. If you look at Notre Dame's strength of schedule before the season starts, Notre Dame always has like top 30 strength of schedule at the beginning of every single year. And then they finish 10-2, and people are like, well, yeah, but they beat this team or they only beat that team. And then it's like, well, I mean, 12 weeks ago, you guys all said these teams were really good. Now all of a sudden they're not good. You know what I mean? That happens every single year. Cincinnati, I think they got a really good team. I think that they could probably beat Michigan State because I think Cincinnati defensive backs are very talented. That's the best thing about Cincinnati's football team is their DBs. And if they could get into a position where they can force them to leave the run game, abandon the run game to where they got to rely on their quarterback, Cincinnati would definitely win that game. But I don't think that their defense is good enough to stop that running back.
And that's going to be key, too. And that's why when I hear people say with Cincinnati, yeah, but statistically, look at how great their defense is. I'm like, yeah, but that's lining up with the level of competition they play. It's easy to, even when you look at Navy, they're not going to put up a crap ton of points on you. Even if you have a bad defense, they're not going to put up a crap ton of points on you. So when you have that level of opponents, it's easier to stuff your stats a bit. Like the opponents kind of fall into that. They're naturally not good offensively. So of course your defense is going to look propped up. And I do believe that, hell, Indiana put a lot of points up on them. Indiana's bad. Okay. Well, they put up a lot of points on you. So let's be clear. That's all. That's why I get frustrated with the Cincinnati, debate.
Notre Dame plays Navy every single year. So I don't hold Navy really that hard against Cincinnati, because the thing is, if you're not prepared for the triple option, which a lot of teams look at anytime Ohio State has ever played Navy, they take a bye week before they play Navy. Get ready for that triple option, because you're never going to see it again this season. It's the first time some of these kids have ever seen it. It's just a completely different game now. Cincinnati didn't have that luxury, and you really have to take, when you play a team like Navy, I'm not trying to talk them up and say they're really good. If you play a team like Navy, you have to take advantage of every offensive possession you got, because they will hold the ball forever. Mm-hmm. If you can't stop that run right away, they will hold the ball
because they take off more time, which means
hard.
Less time. They hold on to the ball a long time, which means less opportunities for the offense to get out there multiple times. You have less possessions. I can't remember how many possessions they had against Navy, but I guarantee you they probably had the ball the least amount of times than any other opponent they went up against this year. And that's but that's based on design of that offense. But at the same time,
that going in too.
Yep, that, and you got to prepare for it. And it doesn't matter what about Navy's playing style, because at the end of the day, you still have to go out and do what Ohio State. Like if Ohio State went up against Navy and they only won by 7 points, we would destroy them. Same thing with Oklahoma. Yeah. Same thing with Alabama. Like, I don't know. Cincinnati wants the benefit of the doubt, the same benefit of the doubt that would not be given to other teams. We would be critiquing any team that only won by 7 against Navy. It's not like we're picking on.
I guarantee you. You're absolutely right. And I think that Cincinnati is definitely a top 10 team in the nation this year. I really do think they are. I mean, you can do whatever you want. I really don't care. Outside of Georgia and Alabama, I mean, trust me, I went to Minster's Oktoberfest after the Notre Dame Navy game. I had my Notre Dame gear on, and everybody was running their mouth to me. And I was like, man, I've seen more Cincinnati football jerseys here today than I have in my entire 40 years of life.
I haven't been to Minster. I haven't been to Minster Oktoberfest in forever. I miss those cabbage rolls, man. That's what I love. Man. The beer in the milk jugs.
Beer, that's me.
Yeah.
But I told a guy there, I said, hey, listen, man. I said, if your name ain't Alabama or Georgia, it doesn't matter. I think the college football field is pretty weak, but those Alabama's got Nick Saban. Go ahead, until Saban retires, just keep putting them in the top 4, because the guy wins a national championship every other year.
Yep.
And Georgia is an absolute beast this year. So, I mean, if you're not those two teams, just be happy where you're at, I guess.
All right, Tim, good stuff, man. I appreciate you. Take care.
Thanks, sir.
518-1410, 518-1410. If we wanted to change this up a bit, I don't mind. I mean, Bearcat fans, that's fine. We'll definitely talk with you. Buckeye fans, I am curious. Are you okay with being ranked at 5th? When I put out my rankings earlier in the week, I was like, I think they should be number 2, where Alabama is. And that was before I really took a deep dive into these metrics, like the strength of schedule, strength of record, strength of opponent, and everything like that. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like, I just think right now it's really going to come down to, Ohio State wins out, they're fine. Ohio State wins out, they're fine. Everything will be okay. They control their destiny. Michigan State controls their destiny. Right now, all the top teams like Oregon and everyone else, like I guess Oregon, I didn't think Oregon controlled their destiny, but now that they're number 4, Oregon winning out, they control their own destiny. But like, let's say Georgia, Alabama are locked. Okay. Oregon wins out. Okay, they're 4. Michigan State wins out, they're 3. But if Ohio State wins out, they're in the top 4. If Oklahoma wins out, I don't know. I mean, the committee's done a pretty good job of holding even undefeated teams accountable. That's what I loved about last night, folks. There's undefeated teams that weren't given the undefeated preferential treatment. And that's what I love. Now, here's an argument for Bearcat fans that I would entertain. I was impressed with what the committee did last night, because they said just because you're undefeated doesn't mean you're top 4. we're going to dissect your strength of schedule, strength of resume, all that stuff. Are they doing that this year just because Cincinnati's undefeated and they have to make it fair? I'll entertain that. I will definitely entertain that. Then why this year is Oklahoma at 8-0 when any other year Oklahoma would be top 4 at 8-0. But I feel like Oklahoma was used as the buffer to justify not putting Cincinnati in. Does that make sense? Like, let's put Oklahoma at 8, because guess what I've already been doing today, and without even realizing it, I keep using Oklahoma as an example to tell Bearcat fans to stop crying because they held Oklahoma accountable too. But why did they hold Oklahoma accountable? Because they're justified in doing so, but they've also been justified in years past to hold undefeated teams accountable for not playing anybody. Clemson comes to mind. You know what I would have loved to have seen this year? A Trevor Lawrence undefeated Clemson team. Because their strength of schedule is straight garbage every year. So Bearcat fans, if you want me to be a little bit nicer, I could do that. Hear me out. Clemson has always been given the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the top 4 being undefeated and playing nobody because, well, it's Trevor Lawrence and Clemson, right? Well, Oklahoma didn't get that treatment this year. Clemson would have got that treatment this year. Ohio State didn't get the preferential treatment. I do believe, so I feel like the committee, they're holding everyone accountable this year because it justifies them holding Cincinnati accountable. It's hard to hold Cincinnati accountable when you don't hold Clemson accountable, right? That's why I think that, the best thing going for the committee this year is that you don't have that Trevor Lawrence-led Clemson team. So that's one way that I look at it and say, okay, I can give you that maybe. Maybe they changed up how they, maybe they moved the criteria metric model because it justifies their placement of Cincinnati. Because we can argue, like, Oregon is kind of a weak number 4. Like, let's be real. Like, I'm not just saying that because they beat Ohio State, but Oregon's kind of a weak number 4. Michigan State's kind of a weak number 3. Like, I still think, and you can call me Homer if you want, but even you Buckeye haters listening right now, after what I've seen, Ohio State's better than Oregon, even with the loss. Jeff Schwartz with Fox got mad at me earlier today. We were going back and forth on Twitter because he was just ticked off. The results on the field don't matter. I'm like, what are you crying about? Your team's number 4. But, like, let's be real. Like, Oregon and Ohio State play again today. Ohio State's winning. Timing matters, too, which is why these non-conference games are so great to put at the beginning because you have more time. Michigan State benefited from the recency bias. Michigan State is in the playoff right now because they're the tip of the tongue. They're on everyone's mind right now after what we just saw them do against Michigan. If they beat Michigan 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they have a bunch of, like, let's say they would have come off that narrow win against Nebraska right now, they're probably not in the top 4. But, I will entertain. The only conspiracy theory I'll entertain with the Cincinnati stuff is that I believe that they handled it fair. They held Oklahoma accountable. They held Ohio State accountable. They held a lot of teams accountable, which I like. But I feel like, are they only doing that this year because it justifies keeping Cincinnati, holding them accountable? Because they haven't always kept teams accountable in years past. I will give you guys that. Okay, I will give you that. They have done with Clemson what I said earlier that they don't do, but they do. Well, it's Trevor Lawrence and Clemson and Dabo Swinney. There's some teams that I don't need to see them beat somebody to know that they are somebody. This year with Oklahoma, I kind of need to see you beat somebody to know you're somebody, even though you're undefeated, and I know you're Oklahoma, but you haven't beaten anybody that I'm like, yeah, Oklahoma's for real. Right? Like, we just haven't seen that. Cincinnati at least has beaten somebody to let us know that there's somebody, but who are they? And then the Buckeyes, you beat Penn State. You struggled against Tulsa. You won by 3 possessions, though. Took care of business. Okay, you lost to Oregon, yes, but you lost a 1-possession game. I mean, we can't punish you for losing a 1-possession game. You didn't get blown out because that's the one rule of the playoff. You can lose, you can't get blown out. That's why Buckeye fans, and that's why the idiot that called me a homer earlier, I just wanted to go off on him so bad because he's so far from knowing what the hell he's talking about. Buckeye fans wanted to run me out of this city years ago. Keith Byers, I thought, was going to choke me one day because I actually uttered, hey, you got blown out by Purdue. You don't deserve to be in the playoff. If looks can kill, I thought Byers was going to murder me. I really do. I was terrified of him. I was afraid to actually tell him what I thought about the Buckeyes that year. But you can lose. You can't get blown out. Ohio State lost. They didn't get blown out. Alabama lost. They didn't get blown out. It's that simple. Once you get blown out, you don't have a shot. And that's the reality of it. 518-1410. Let's go to Justin. Justin, is this you? Justin, you there? All right, Justin, we'll try another time. Get Justin, call back 518-1410. Let's go to Meredith. Meredith, how are you? Man, we ain't got nobody on these lines. 518-1410. Caller, who's this? All right, maybe our phones are down, which, typical. Doesn't surprise me at all. Heavy caller day. 518-1410. Let me get these phone lines figured out and fixed. Give us a call, 518-1410. I'd love to get you guys back on. Hold up, we got a caller right now. We got Brian. Brian, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing all right, man.
Oh, it's Bama Brian. The Bama
That's right.
Brian. How are you, my friend? This is how I know the polls have been released. This is how I know it's college football season. We got Bama Brian. How are you, sir? Welcome.
Man, I'm doing all right, and I tell you what, it's all going to shake out. It's all going to shake out in the end. But we all know that UC had no business being in that top four, because any of those, Ohio State and UC right now, who you taking? I'm taking Ohio State by 3 touchdowns, and everybody's having this desire that I'm hearing. It's like to have these average teams in there. Well, go ahead and expand it to 8 teams. The first round is going to be blowouts across the board.
But Brian, if you expand to 8, I mean, who's to say that? I mean, Michigan's resume and some of these Michigans, and these other teams, I still think that they're being given the benefit of the doubt at 6. But if you expand it to 8 and have to really start breaking down these resumes, when you have the 100th ranked strength of schedule, there's still teams that deserve to be ahead of you, like a 1-loss Michigan and others. Not in a 4 team. I'm fine with them being at 6 and a 4 team. But if you expand to 8, I'd still be advocating for a 1-loss Michigan team to be ranked ahead of them with their strength of schedule. So I just think that expanding it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just placing these bad teams. Not bad. Cincinnati's not bad. Expanding it doesn't necessarily mean that there's a spot waiting for you if you're the Bearcats. Expanding it just means that the same criteria used for the top 4 will also be used for the top 8, and I'm not sure they're safe in that situation either.
No, they're not. I think the only thing that would work out for those guys if they was in another conference, but I don't think anybody's going to pick them up. So,
Cincinnati's in the Big 12. Cincinnati's going to the Big 12. I think, if they can be patient and keep building on this, I think they'll be fine. And by the way, there's still a chance they can get in. I know you don't believe this. Your team could end up picking up a second loss and be knocked out. Ohio State could pick up a second loss. I mean, all unlikely stuff. But Brian, this season's been as chaotic as I can ever remember. There's still a shot for the Bearcats, believe it or not.
Well, I can tell you right now, and I'm going to make this statement. What's today's date? November the 3rd?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the Tide's going to win out, and they'll beat Georgia, and they're going to win another natty.
All right.
Just remember that.
I can't tell you you're wrong, man. Like you're the one fan of Bama. Not you're the one fan. You're a fan of a team that it's like Tom Brady. If someone calls this, I guarantee you Tom Brady's winning a Super Bowl this year. I would be stupid to say, no, he's not. So for you saying that, I mean, who am I to tell you you're wrong? I mean, you're right. I mean, who knows? I don't want that to happen. I'm a Buckeye fan, but who am I to tell you you're wrong? Because it's Nick Saban. It's Alabama. It's a dynasty. You can't stop him.
I remember one time I called in and Keith Byers jumped all over me.
That was the year, by the way. That was the year they got blown out by Purdue. That was the year I was terrified of Keith. I look forward to seeing him every week. That week, I was terrified every Monday when he'd come in and every Sunday. I don't want to sit next to this dude. He's going to kill me one of these weeks.
I wonder how he felt when Alabama beat Ohio State in a national championship game. I really wonder how he felt that day. He had to be out of his mind. So,
well, we have a show on Sundays and a show on Monday. You could always give OKB a call. I'm sure he would love to hear from you. I'm sure he'll give you the Keith Byers show is Mondays from noon to 1. And Sunday mornings from 11 to 12 or from 11:30 to 1. So, I mean, there's multiple chances to talk to Keith. And he would love to argue.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to hit him up on that. But it's good to listen to your show, and I really like what you're doing, my friend. Take care, and of course, I roll.
And you know what's convenient about that? And Brian, thank you so much for the kind words and even the roll tide. But I didn't cut that phone line off, but his phone line did cut off right as he was about to say roll tide. And I swear I didn't do a thing, but that's a sign right there, Brian. Like, I love you, Brian. But like, as you were saying roll tide, like the phone line cut out and I didn't even touch it. So that's a sign right there. Just throwing that out there. 518-1410. Let's go to Bill. Bill, how are you, sir? Is this Bill?
Talking to me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Bill.
All right, Bill. How are you? Welcome. You're live.
How can you say Ohio State deserves to even be in the top 10? They've played no one this year. Penn State shouldn't even be rated right now.
But they are.
Team would
But
already
they
been
are.
out of the top 20.
But they are rated. They beat the rated Penn State team. Look, I mean, what you fired up about? Where do you want them to be ranked?
You guys, the way Ohio State played last year in the championship game,
this is 2021. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. This is about this season, not last season.
Nobody this year. They've looked like crap all year.
Who's your team?
I mean, it's like I'm a Kentucky football team.
I'm hanging up on you. You're a Kentucky fan. You calling in? Bill, you're a Kentucky fan, and you call in to talk smack about the Buckeyes. Really? Like that's what we're doing? You call in all fired up. You don't even have the courtesy to turn your damn radio off in the background. And you're going to call in. I respected you at first. I was like, man, this guy, he's passionate. I love passionate people. I love a good shouting match. I love it. Bring it. But not from Kentucky football fans. I gotta go to break. I'm Kentucky football. You guys. I gotta go to break. 518-1410. Kentucky Bill. Oh my goodness. UK. That was cute. I mean, holy moly. Do you hold your team to that same standard? You can't be a Kentucky football fan and call in and yell at me about the Buckeyes. Holy moly. Oh my goodness. I gotta go. We'll be back. Woo.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
This afternoon will be partly cloudy, a high near 48. Tonight will also be partly cloudy, a low near 30. And tomorrow will be partly cloudy, a high near 48. I'm Pete Spivak for 1410 ESPN Radio.
Weather is brought to you by Cullet Propane, making buying propane easy since 1952, offering budget billing and pre-buy options. Find out more at culletpropane.com.
We're planning a trip to Spain later this year.
But our Spanish
is pretty bad. So we're using Babbel.
Babbel's conversation-based method teaches you real-life words and phrases. And with Babbel's interactive, bite-sized lessons, you'll remember what you learned.
There's no easier way to learn another language.
Ahora hablamos español.
He just said, now we speak Spanish.
Babbel, language for life. Now try Babbel for free. Just go to Babbel.com. That's Babbel.com.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
If you need new roofing, siding, or gutters, skylights, or patio enclosures, if you're a homeowner or business and need someone you can trust, don't take a chance. Enhance with Lance. Lance Roofing and Siding in Fairborn has been satisfying customers since 1993 and hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Lance Roofing and Siding, 8460 Dayton Springfield Road in Fairborn. Call for a free estimate at 864-2722. That's 864-2722 or online at lanceroofing.com.
Cordell Transportation is now hiring Class A CDL drivers. $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, $5,000 sign-on bonus. Home daily dedicated lanes, no-touch freight. Apply today at CordellTransportation.com. Cordell Transportation, driven to succeed.
You have empty office space to fill or home office to create. You know what you need. You know what you'd like. But you also have a pretty good idea after you've shopped around the usual places what you need and what you like might not happen. Well, then you haven't been to Charles Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. Nobody has their selection. Nobody has their discounts. And every week there's something new. If you need office furniture, Larrick's Warehouse Outlet can sell it to you for half the price and below manufacturer's selected prices. Half price and below on hundreds of items. Selection from budget to the best. Really, desks from $50 to $5,000. Filing cabinets from $25 to $500. Before you go anywhere else, do yourself a favor and come to Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. With 25,000 square feet of selection, you're not going to go anywhere else. Larrick's Warehouse Outlet at 23 McOil Avenue, Dayton. Open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Larrick's, continuing the tradition.
Open enrollment for healthcare.gov is here. If you're uninsured or have a job that doesn't offer insurance, check out healthcare.gov. Due to a new law, prices are lower and more people qualify. Now, 4 out of 5 customers pay just $10 a month or less with financial help. It's easier than ever to find the right plan for you, and millions of Americans, just like you, have already enrolled. New law, lower prices, more people qualify. Sign up at healthcare.gov by December 15th.
This is Edwin Moses, Olympic champion and world record holder in the 400-meter hurdles. I'm a proud Daytonian, and I've got an important message today for men, especially you guys over 40. As an Olympian and physicist, I focused on my numbers for most of my life. Over 400 meters, 10 hurdles, 13 steps, 122 races over 9 years, 9 months, 9 days. I ran and I won. Now I focus on my most important stats: blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, and PSA levels. Those are the numbers that really count. So if you don't know your numbers, now is the time. See your primary care provider regularly to stay on top of your game, because no matter your age, every day and every number counts.
This message is brought to you by Molina Healthcare and Community Health Centers of Greater Dayton.
Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street are huge supporters of the Dayton Flyers. Whether you're one of the 13,000 fans cheering on the Flyers at UD Arena or one of the hundreds of fans packed inside Tim's on game day, there is only 2 places that you can feel the passion of the Flyer faithful more than anywhere else. Timothy's Bar and Grill is also a sponsor of the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash in the afternoons and the Talking Out Loud Hour on Thursday nights with Sully. Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. Go Flyers.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car and home insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Don't miss the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, presented by Orion Sports Medicine. Weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. right here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.
We welcome you back. Justin Kinner hanging out with you here on a Wednesday. Justin Kinner Show presented by Orion Sports Medicine, OGW Energy Resources, and of course Tim's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. The Dayton Flyers tip off the season next week. Of course, they got the UIC Flames at UD Arena. Look, I love the passionate back and forth between myself and Flyer fans. You know, I'm a Wright State guy, so I have to represent. I have to stand up for my team. Look, Wright State doesn't have a whole lot of representation in this city. As far as media kind of giving them support, like everyone, and that's totally fine. UD is the face of this city. I mean, the name of their program is the name of the city. I mean, no one's ever going to overtake that. But I love college basketball, and I've always said that for me, like growing up, like I had no clue what I was going to be when I was growing up, but like the fact that I get to do a show in a city that is passionate about college basketball, like I am beyond lucky. College football, I mean, my goodness, like this is such a great place to live too if you're a big sports fan, because you're not locked in. Like if I lived in Cincinnati, and people live in Cincinnati, which is fine, but you would be locked into the Reds and the Bengals and their MLS team and all that stuff. So not that that's a bad thing, whatever, but like I love Dayton because we get to talk Browns too. We get to talk the Bengals. We get to talk about the Bearcats. We get to talk about the Buckeyes. We get to talk about the whole college football playoff landscape. We get to talk about the Blue Jackets because I'm a big hockey fan. Not really, but I can give it a shot. It just won't be good. I hate the host that, by the way, I'm going to talk hockey because I feel like I have to, even though I don't know it. I'm just telling you, I don't know nothing about hockey. People get mad. You don't talk hockey. You don't want somebody that doesn't know nothing about hockey talking hockey. Just throwing that out there. But I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't wait for college basketball to tip off next week. Not just tip off, but to tip off with fans in the arena. That's what I'm most jacked about. Can't wait. But we welcome you back. And that last caller, Brian. Shout out to Bama Brian, by the way. But Bill. Kentucky Bill. In fact, I'm going to make sure I write down that name. So if Kentucky Bill ever calls back in, Kentucky Bill, I hung up on you because you're a little fired up for my liking for right now. I don't have anybody, basically looking over the phones. I had to be careful. You seemed a little fired up. But I had no problem with you calling in, being all pissed off about my take on the Buckeyes. But when you start saying blasphemous things like Ohio State shouldn't even be in the top 10, like that's where we got to stop. Like, do you really believe, you truly believe that Ohio State's not a top 10 team? Like, you can have that opinion, and maybe I should have given you more time to back it up, but I don't think that you were in a very rational place to have that conversation. But where you really lost me, Kentucky, Bill, was Kentucky. And by the way, I don't care who your team is. Like, I follow a non-popular team too. Like, whenever I talk bad about college basketball teams and they say, well, who's your team, Kenner? I'm like, I'm a Wright State guy. Like, I mean, we're in the Wright State jacket right now. They laugh at me. I get it. I'm Bill. I'm Wright State Kenner, right? You're Kentucky Bill. I'm Wright State Kenner. I get what it's like to be a fan of a team that is not the most popular, and they kind of laugh at you a little bit, and that's okay. I can respect that. But you just seemed a little too fired up for my taste. I didn't know where you were going to go. I felt like a non-FCC word was going to be dropped, and then I would get in trouble. And, Bill, I'm just not willing to get in trouble over Kentucky football. Like, that's the thing. Like, when we get heated with our listeners, like, it's great. Like, if I get in trouble, it better be over a very heated, fun conversation. But I am not going to get fired over a Kentucky football fan saying something on air he shouldn't. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. But to sit there and say that about Ohio State, look, their only loss, okay, their only loss is against the number 4 team in the country by 1 possession, okay? They've blown out every dang opponent that they should. I mean, they embarrassed Maryland. They embarrassed Rutgers. I know people want to bring up, well, they haven't played anybody. Now, Maryland, Rutgers, they're nobody. Akron's nobody. I get that all these teams are nobodies, but you know what? They've beat them like nobodies. Like, that's the big conversation about Cincinnati at this point, is the fact that they're playing nobodies, but their scores are not indicating that the talent gap between the nobody opponents and themselves. Like, I do think the committee can overlook the strength of schedule. And I believe that they have overlooked the strength of schedule, which is why Cincinnati is currently sitting at number 6. But I do believe that they do look at it. It's involved in the decision making, and they've overlooked it to justify putting Cincinnati at 6. But let's be real. Cincinnati, you can't play the victim here. You have to take responsibility for not blowing out Navy. I mean, the rules were simple and clear. Like, you act like you're surprised that not blowing out Navy cost you. Like, come on. You act like you act surprised because you were held accountable for not blowing out Tulane. The rules are simple. When you don't have a very difficult schedule, you're going to be perceived differently. You're going to be judged differently than everybody else. While Alabama got the benefit of the doubt for losing to a 2-loss Texas A&M team, they got the benefit of the doubt because they have the toughest schedule in all of college football for the teams in the top 10 right now. So it's no wonder why they lost. So they're going to get the benefit of the doubt there. You're not going to get the benefit of the doubt because you are trying to convince the committee that we are as good as Alabama. I keep hearing, Bearcat fans that called in earlier say, well, what would they do? I mean, we know what they can do if they get on the field with this team. Well, do we? Well, last year, look what they did to Georgia. Well, that was last year. Kentucky Bill calling in, bringing up what Alabama did to Ohio State in the national championship game. That's all fine and dandy. Ohio State was in the national championship game, by the way. I love how we discredit that like it's nothing. But anyways, the point is I don't care what Cincinnati did against Georgia last year. I don't care what UCF did against Auburn years ago. Like, people keep using these, look at what Boise State did. That's super, but you also have to get to be to get to that stage, to get to the stage to have a chance to do that. You have to earn your way there. Cincinnati, what they want is a handout. They want to be told, it's okay that you don't blow out your bad teams. It's okay that you play in a weak conference. It's okay that, you don't play a tough opponent every week while everybody else is. It's okay. And I think that's a loser mentality of wanting that. Like, that's what I would love to call into the shows in Cincinnati right now and be like, Lance, calm down. You don't play anybody. That's why you're being criticized here. Lance, Cincinnati, you had a chance to blow out Navy. You didn't blow out Navy. And then Lance, in his Cincinnati wisdom, starts bringing up points about, well, how come, the fact that Michigan State, they only beat Nebraska, by 1 possession. Nebraska's better than Navy. Nebraska's better than Navy. Like, we get to the point where we're trying to use, well, our bad teams are better than your bad teams. That's such a weird argument to make, but that's really what it's coming down to. I'm not convinced. I mean, they're struggling to beat Navy. They're struggling to beat Tulane. What would Cincinnati do against Nebraska? You act like Nebraska's the same level of bad as what they're playing. Let's be real. Ohio State's going to bludgeon Nebraska this week. What would the line be for Cincinnati and Nebraska? What's the line right now? Actually, let me check that. What is the line for the Nebraska game this coming up weekend for Ohio State? I guarantee you it's at least 3 possessions. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm pulling it up now. So Ohio State, Nebraska. Oh, wow. I'm wrong. I'm dead wrong. Live here on the spot. Ohio State's a 14.5-point favorite. But here's the deal. Ohio State will cover that and then some. Ohio State, I'm telling you now, will win by 24-plus points. They will blow out Nebraska because Ohio State is genuinely better than Nebraska. You know, Cincinnati was a 28-point favorite against Navy. You won by 7. You were a 20-point favorite against Tulane. You didn't even win by 10. Like, come on. It's not that hard to understand why they were kept at an arm's length away from the top 4. It's really not that hard to figure that out. Like, it's really simple. I got called a Buckeye homer earlier. I think it's Bearcat homerism that's getting in the way of logic here. You're mad that it's not fair for the Bearcats, and I really need to know why it's not fair. So this is what fair needs to be. What you want fair to be is what you want to be fair is you want your team to play basically nobody all year, and then be compared to one-loss teams who have a loss because they actually play people, and then you like to pump your chest and say, well, we're better than them. We're better than – I mean, Alabama has a loss. We don't. We're better than them. No, you're not. You're not. Oh, Ohio State, they have a loss. We don't. We're better. You're not. You're not better. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You want fair, play tougher opponents, which you're about to do by getting in the Big 12. Is the Big 12 going to be as good as the Ohio State's conference and Alabama's conference? No. But I guarantee you, your strength of schedule, although bad, it won't be in the 100s. That's really what it comes down to. This isn't a shakedown. This isn't disrespect. This isn't any of that stuff. It's just common sense. It really is. But yeah, Ohio State, I mean, they beat Indiana 54-7. 54-7. Like, Indiana wasn't even hanging around with Ohio State. They wasn't even a game. I remember I was on vacation in Florida. I was at Pensacola. My fiance and I, our best friends, like, we were in Pensacola. We were at this awesome ass bar in Pensacola, our feet in the sand. I'm drinking a Rona. I'm having a great time. I'm watching the Bearcats. I'm watching Indiana. I'm watching the Bearcats. I'm watching Indiana. I'm watching the Bearcats pull away late to win 38-24, and it was a ball game for the majority of that. Which is fine. You won 38-24. You won by more than one possession. That's what you're supposed to do. But then when you watch Ohio State, you want to talk about like opponents and everything else. Ohio State bludgeoned Indiana. You needed 4 quarters to beat Indiana. It was done at the end of the first quarter for Ohio State. That's where I'm coming from. Like, we got to stop with this imagination thing. Like, it is what it is. Now I'm sounding like I'm just bullying Cincinnati, but sometimes it's like you have to use logic here. Otherwise, you guys are just going to keep trying to talk yourself into Cincinnati actually being as good as those other teams. They're lucky to be at number 6. You play nobody. Oh, we beat Notre Dame. You played one team that's worthy of bragging about. Everyone else, not even close. For Ohio State, are we bragging about Maryland? Are we bragging about Rutgers? Are we bragging about those teams? No, but is there any doubt in your mind when Ohio State and Maryland are on the field together who the better team is? Is there any doubt? No, there's no doubt who the better team is. When I watched Navy and Cincinnati play, that was a little doubt. Man, is Cincinnati as good as what they say? They need 4 quarters to beat Navy. Ohio State, Maryland, they win 66-17. Rutgers, 52-13. Akron, 59-7. All right, they put 45 points up on Minnesota. They gave up 31. We ripped them for their defense. Alabama's defense isn't that great. Cincinnati brags about their defense. Do you really think that player for player, Cincinnati's defense is better than Alabama's and Ohio State's? Because if Ohio State played the Bearcats' schedule, their defense would look a lot better. You know why Ohio State's defense doesn't look as great statistically? Because the level of competition. Even if it is Maryland and Rutgers, it's still better than Navy and Tulane. It is what it is. If I sound like a snob now, I'm being snobby. I get it. That elitism. But elitism, it's justified. It's justified. 518-1410. I'm by myself today, so I see guys that are trying to call in. So I'm going to go to the break real quick. I'm going to get you guys on hold, and we're going to let you counter when we come back. 518-1410. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, minus Kev Nash today. We'll pick up with this when we come back. 518-1410. Let's hear it.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash.
Justin, you're awesome, baby.
Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Hey team, we landed the contract!
Yeah! Ohio's web design studio just landed the gig of a lifetime.
It starts next week.
Their staff needs to double before the dream deal becomes a nightmare.
I need front end, back end, a project manager.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Instant Match instantly connects you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your sponsored job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Today on Hey Culligan, why does your team stink? Here's Coach Waters.
Hey Culligan, yeah, my team stinks.
Ooh, harsh.
No, I mean they stink. They won't hit the showers because it makes their skin all dry and itchy.
Coach, it sounds like your guys have been hit hard by hard water.
You kidding me? Hard water?
Yep, so let's call an audible in the form of one Culligan Smart High Efficiency Water Softener to get the smooth back in their skin and the stink out of your team.
Okay, Culligan, I'm putting you in.
Coach, we're already on the way. Kick things off with a free in-home water test from a local Culligan water expert at Culligan.com.
There's confusion about how to protect yourself from COVID. One thing is certain, whether you're vaccinated or not, you need an accurate thermometer to check for fever, the leading sign of flu and COVID. Be vigilant and contact your medical provider at the first sign of fever. Don't rely on non-contact thermometers that have no scientific studies. Only the Exergen temporal scanner thermometer has been proven accurate in more than 100 clinical studies. Learn more at Exergen.com.
KTH Parts Industries in St. Paris, Ohio has immediate openings for second and third shift production associates. KTH promotes from within, offers medical, dental, 401k, attendance bonus, and a competitive wage, starting at just over $19 per hour with annual increases. KTH will be hosting walk-in interviews Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. through 3 p.m. Please bring a resume and photo ID. Visit kth.net for more information. KTH is an equal opportunity employer.
Modernize your home's lighting at Menards. Turn any recessed light into an energy-efficient LED downlight. Retrofit lights are dimmable, easy to install, and can change color temperatures. Pick up an 8-pack of 6-inch LED retrofit lights for just $14.99 after sale price and 11% off. That's $15 off. Get it now and update your lighting today. Good through November 6th. Savings are mail-in rebates. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Save big money at Menards.
Hey, I'm College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byers, and I'm here with John Glazier from Glazier Soft Water. Did you know we are Dayton's home of the Ohio State Buckeyes?
Yes, I did. But did you know that Glazier Soft Water is the home of the 7-year worry-free parts and labor warranty? We've been making water great since 1988. What were you doing in 1988?
That was my third year in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles. I had 10 touchdowns that season, and we made the playoffs in 1988.
So you can say that we both have been doing great since 1988. Glazier Soft Water. Glazier Water is better water.
Mucinex is the #1 OTC brand doctors trust for themselves and their families. So with cold and flu season upon us, why would you use anything else? Available at CVS.
Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street are huge supporters of the Dayton Flyers. Whether you're one of the 13,000 fans cheering on the Flyers at UD Arena or one of the hundreds of fans packed inside Tim's on game day, there is only two places that you can feel the passion of the Flyer faithful more than anywhere else. Timothy's Bar and Grill is also a sponsor of the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash in the afternoons and the Talking Out Loud Hour on Thursday nights with Sully. Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. Go Flyers.
Attention Class A CDL drivers. Looking to be more than just a number? Yoel Transportation in Dayton is looking for drivers with at least 1.5 years experience. Yoel has open positions for no-tarp flatbed drivers and no-touch regional or local van drivers. Yoel is ELD compliant and offers 401k with match, medical, dental, vision, holiday pay, vacation, safety bonuses, and now has a rider policy. Call Rick or Joe at 937-294-5933 and ask about the $5,000 sign-on bonus today.
Some people think fall is the best time of the year. It may also be a great time to consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
So we're also live on Facebook, by the way. And by the way, I know there's a lot going on with the Cleveland Browns. Everyone thinks I'm avoiding the Browns today because of, It's not good. Everyone thinks I hide from the bad storylines with the Browns. Folks, we're 8 games into the Browns season. If I'm hiding from bad Browns storylines, I wouldn't have talked Browns at all this year. So the Browns have been a disaster, and this Odell Beckham Jr. thing, although sounds like a disaster, it actually could be a blessing in disguise. I'll talk about that coming up around the corner. World Series ended last night. Congratulations, David Shaw, big Braves fan. His Braves won the World Series last night against the hated Houston Astros. I was pulling for the Astros for one reason and one reason only, and that was because of Dusty Baker. Had Dusty Baker not been the manager, I really wouldn't have given 2 rips about the Houston Astros as far as that's concerned. Feel for Dusty, man. I thought that was his shot. I thought that was his shot. I don't know if he's going to come back and manage the Astros. They're going to lose some key guys. I don't think they're going to kind of plummet into the ground, but I do think they're going to kind of be like the Cardinals a little bit. Just be competitive, be good. I just don't think they're going to be that 100-plus win team and be legitimate, World Series contenders. But look, we didn't think that the Braves were World Series contenders heading in to the postseason. The Braves are why I get so mad at Reds fans who started using excuses like, well, the Reds really fell apart down the stretch because they lost, they lost Jesse Winker. Really? Because if you look at, losing Acuna and losing guys like that for the Braves, they didn't just sit on their hands. They went and they got Jock Peterson. They went and got some names at the trade deadline. Adam Duvall. I mean, how about that? Former Red. That's just salt in the wound right there. They didn't sit on their hands and just say, woe is me. They actually went out and made some moves happen. The Reds already wasted no time in making a move today. Tucker Barnhart was traded to the Lions. My goodness, I'm crossing over sports here. To the Tigers. So I hate to see Tucker Barnhart was a fan favorite, man. I was a big Tucker Barnhart fan. Not big, I'm not against them moving on from him. I think it's time for Tyler Stevenson to get a shot, so I'm not really against it. But at the same time, it stinks to see him go. They, save some money on the deal, and that's going to be key moving forward because I think the Reds right now are putting themselves in position to make a run at Nick Castellanos. Another name to keep an eye on. I really hope that Wade Miley is a priority of the Reds this offseason. I think there's a player option for him. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. But I really hope that, Wade Miley, when you look at Wade Miley and you look at, Nick Castellanos, clearly Nick Castellanos is the superstar of the two, but the glue that'll keep that rotation afloat is Wade Miley. For one, he's a lefty. Tough to find lefties. Big Wade Miley fan. Loved what he brought to the table this past year. I know he was not good in 2020. He was injured a lot, and really when you had a 60-game season, there wasn't a whole lot of time for him to get healthy. So that was the unfortunate part of that. But I really hope, just for these minimal moves right here, moving on from Tucker, even though Tucker Barnhart, and I hate the term platoon and all that, but look, I just have to sit here. Rather than complain about baseball, I'm just going to have to get with the times, I guess, because I'm probably the oldest 32-year-old in the history of baseball fandom. I'm all about get off my lawn when it comes to the changes in baseball. I can't stand it. But I do know this. If any team out there ever pays a top pitcher top pitching money when you're only asking them to pitch 4 or 5 innings in a World Series, what the hell's the point of paying them? If I'm a bullpen rep, and look, baseball's about to be shut down here in a month. I think, you're going to have a work stoppage and all that stuff because they're going to go into a little strike. And who knows if spring training will start on time? Who knows the next time we'll even be watching baseball? I hope you enjoyed that World Series. But the problem I have is if I'm a closer, if I'm a bullpen guy, I'm bitching and complaining. I want more money. If you look at the World Series, the games that matter, the playoff games in the World Series, when more than half of the innings and half of the innings pitched and the pitch count is going to the bullpen, they need more money. Stop paying the pitchers of the world. You got to stop paying these big pitchers that big money. Luis Castillo coming up. Do you really want the Reds to dump the biggest chunk of their revenue, of their money and resources into a pitcher that today's baseball only requires to pitch 4 innings at least? That's stupid. That doesn't make any sense. So it's either the starting pitching wages are going to have to come down or, and I think that has to happen so that the wages for the bullpen guys can go up, because what we have learned in the World Series the last couple of years is that the bullpen is just as, if not more important than the rotation. We watched, and the Braves won a World Series, so I can't sit here and knock it, but they took out their starting pitcher who had a no-hitter 5 innings into the ball game because, hey, matchups, right? It's more preventative measures. Baseball's all about the preventative measures now. They don't wait for the pitcher to blow up the game before they make the change. They try to prevent the car wreck. Right? That's what basically is going on right now. Can't say I'm a fan of it. I don't think it the problem is the logic isn't wrong. All right. So let's take the stats, the statistics, the analytics show that third time through the order. Okay. The analytics show that that's smart. That's, analytically it shows that this pitcher, the third time through the order, is horrible. So rather than wait for him to load the bases by walking guys, rather than him give up a 3-run bomb and then the game's out of reach before you made the change, let's be preventative here. Let's get in front of it before. The logic is right. The problem is it's not aesthetically pleasing to the baseball fans. I pay good money to go watch Luis Castillo pitch for 7 innings, not 4. Now, if Luis Castillo's getting rocked and they have to take him out, fine. But if he's throwing 70 pitches into the 5th inning and he has a no-hitter and my manager, David Bell, pulls him, I'm pissed. I paid good money to watch a no-hitter. I paid good money to watch this guy. The logic is not wrong, so I need to change my view on that. I need to stop ripping David Bell for using this logic in baseball because it's not wrong. It makes sense. But I just don't like it. I don't like the idea that how is that good for any sport? Can you imagine if the NBA said, hey, we are only going to play Anthony Davis and LeBron James and Kevin Durant and James Harden and Russell Westbrook, and you go down and, we are only going to play our superstars 20 minutes a game because the analytics show that injuries go down. That would be good logic. That would make sense. Let's play our superstars less so that they don't get injured. Because if the numbers show that that's the case, who are we as fans to say that they are wrong for doing that? But as a paying fan, if I'm going to pay good money to go watch an NBA game, I want to watch LeBron James for 35 to 40 minutes a game. I don't want to go watch him for 20. And if they're only going to play him for 20 minutes, you better bring them damn prices down. And that's how I am with baseball. Okay, fine. The logic is correct. You are not wrong. A preventative approach, I can't argue with that. I'm going to stop arguing with it. David Bell, it makes sense. His reasoning for why he does things makes sense. But it's not aesthetically pleasing to me as a fan. Making pitching changes every single inning is not aesthetically pleasing to me. That's really why the games take so long. It's not mound visits, okay? It's not TV commercials. It's strictly that. All right? I'm going to try and change my tune on baseball, my view of baseball, and stop being the guy that is screaming at the wheel coming at me and maybe just kind of hold on and enjoy the ride a little bit. But it's not. I will not change my stance that it's bad for baseball. It's good logic for the everyday execution of a team, but it's not good execution for fan involvement. We're wondering why ratings in baseball are dropping. It's because the method of baseball now is, hey, we're going to show you less of our stars now. You're going to see less of the big names in baseball. Can you imagine back in the day, Randy Johnson, who was a freaking draw? I loved Randy Johnson as a kid because no one threw like him or looked like him. He was a lefty. He was tall. He was a draw. I couldn't wait to watch him. Kurt Schilling, I couldn't wait to watch these guys. Can you imagine if we only got 4 innings of those guys a game? That would totally screw over all the fans in baseball. Justin Verlander, he's one of the last old school pitchers of baseball. Can you imagine being a Houston fan and going to a game, paying good money to watch a pitch, and they only pitch in 4 innings? And it's like, what the hell? He's pitching great. Why are you taking him out for? But yeah, the old school baseball, it was more aesthetically pleasing to the fan because you got to see more of the stars. You didn't have double switches left and right. You make 5 or 6 pitching changes throughout a game, which means 5 or 6 different, double switches out in the outfield. You're seeing stars taken out. How many times do we see Jesse Winker taken out of a game or Joey Votto taken out of a game because of a matchup or something like that? It's like, my goodness. You would use the numbers to justify making that switch, but you'll keep Eugenio Suarez hitting 155 in the top half of the order for 85 of the 162-game season. Come on, we can't sit here and say that numbers are making us smarter, but then we look at 155 and say, well, he's going to hit out of it. It doesn't make sense to me. But preventative measures. It makes sense. We saw it in the World Series. Starters coming out of a game with a no-hitter in the 5th inning of a World Series game. Are you kidding me? That's where legends are born. Had that pitcher completed a no-hitter and his team won a World Series game, he would be a legend. And now we were robbed as fans of that opportunity. That's what I mean. Greg Maddux, all those stars of the past mean nothing. Sandy Koufax, it doesn't matter. All the stars, hitters, pitchers, doesn't matter. Nothing. They're nobodies. Those guys were stars because when you want to watch them play, you watched them play. You watched them from beginning to end. Now you have these no-name bullpen guys getting starting. They're starting the game. They're openers. And I'm just like, okay, the logic, it makes sense. The numbers show that I am wrong for telling you that you're wrong. But I'm telling you, as the most important piece of professional sports. It's not the manager. It's not the owner. It's not the athletes. The fan. The fan is the most important thing in sports. And when the fan is telling you, stop taking your pitcher out of the fifth inning, even if it's justified for the sport itself, it's wrong, because you know what? I'm more important than the result of that game, right? Now, I'm not saying me as in Justin Kidder. I know that sounds very arrogant, but me as I represent the fan. You guys, come on, Reds fans. You guys pay good money to go watch Luis Castillo, to go watch Sonny Gray. When Trevor Bauer was here, to watch Trevor Bauer. Imagine, taking Trevor Bauer out of the fourth inning every game. It's like, come on now. What are we doing? So like I said, baseball, these managers, the stats are accurate. It shows they get worse the third time through the order. Let's take the pitcher out. Rather than wait for the pitcher to to walk the bases loaded before we go to our bullpen, rather than wait for the pitcher to give up that 3-run bomb that now puts us in a bind, let's make the change before that. Let's keep bringing in fresh pitchers to prevent that from happening. The logic makes sense, but it's not going to keep fans watching, because there's no stars being born. You're not going to develop stars pitching 4 innings a night. Your bullpen stars are not going to turn into stars being brought in for 1 inning a night. It's just not going to happen. I know closers, that's your role, 1 inning a night, but my goodness, middle relief. If you can get 6 to 7 innings from your starter and allow your middle relief guy to eat up 1 or 2 innings and then go to your closer, that's where the stars were born, because they had set roles. 4 innings, if you're a starter and you go 4 innings, fans aren't going to view you as a starter. Your role is now equal to the middle relief guy. Your role is now equal to the closer. When everyone is getting an inning, it just doesn't feel the same. So that will kill baseball. I know the logic is accurate. It makes sense, but you're killing the sport. The World Series, it was boring as hell, but the Braves storyline was awesome. They lose their star player, which was unfortunate, but they make all these moves at the trade deadline. All of the run into the playoffs, no one saw it coming, and yet here they are, World Series champions. Congratulations to the Braves. It was a great story, but it wasn't a nationally relevant story. I was listening to Dan Patrick earlier today, and he just said, hey, back in the day, baseball, it's no longer America's pastime. Dan Patrick said back in the day, the World Series, we'd be spending 3 hours on the World Series on a show. He said now it's just like it's part of the ticker. It's part of the, it's part of the highlights. It's noteworthy. You want to bring it up, you want to mention it, but it's not going to be, topic A. It's not even a subtopic. It's just it's a line on the ticker at the bottom of the screen. 518-1410. 518-1410. We'll get into the Browns coming up here in just a moment. College football playoff polls released last night. Brian Coleman, Bama Brian, says Alabama has won 3 national championships since the 35-31 OSU victory. What do you think about a 52-24 Alabama beatdown? You must have mistaken me for a Michigan fan. Roll Tide. Oh, this is in response to Eric Pugh on Facebook. When Bama Brian called in, he called Bama Brian out and said, I wonder how Keith felt, talking about Keith Byers. He said, I wonder how Keith Byers felt when Ohio State beat Alabama's ass, years ago. That's what he asked Brian. By the way, Eric Pugh, Bama Brian, he's a preacher, and you're cussing to Bama Brian. I just wanted to let that be known, but I get a good kick out of that. Not cussing at the preacher, but when you don't know he's a preacher, you're dropping curse words. I just get a good kick out of that. I'm juvenile, I know, but yeah, I like the back and forth. I like that, Bama Brian. He's a passionate Bama fan, and I love it, and I love passionate Ohio State fans, except for Kentucky Bill from earlier. Bill, that's such a Kentucky name too, Bill. I like Kentucky Bill here. Like that. He even sounded like Kentucky Bill. Oh, but all mad about Ohio State. 518-1410 talking college football playoffs. What is the one thing about forget Cincinnati. We spent a lot of time on that today, but I am curious your guys' thoughts on what else stood out to you in the playoff rankings last night. What was most impressive to me, it was the fact that they held Oklahoma accountable. Like when I saw Oklahoma come up at 8, I was already applauding the committee, and I had no clue what 7-1 was going to look like, because I was like, good for the committee. Good for the committee for looking at Alabama and saying, or looking at Oklahoma and saying, yeah, you need to be, you need to stop, using all 4 quarters to win games. You need to convince us that you're better than your subpar talent, because we're holding Cincinnati to that standard. You have to live up to it as well. I love that. And that's the thing that Bearcat fans need to understand. It's not the other way around. They're not saying Bearcats fans, we're holding you to the standard of Oklahoma. They're telling Oklahoma, we're holding you to the standard of Cincinnati. We can't tell Cincinnati that you got to blow out your opponents to be in the top 4, but then we're not requiring the same thing from Oklahoma. Good for the committee. I thought that was smart. I thought it was great. That was the right thing to do. That was the right thing to do as far as I'm concerned. I thought that they made the right decision as far as that's concerned. So I'm impressed with that. I really am. But at the end of the day, what stood out to you? 518-1410. Bobby Sparks on Facebook says that, isn't a lot of money in ratings. Who nationally would watch UC? Folks, we got to stop with that. And Bobby, I appreciate your take on that kind of. And here's why. I honestly, and I mean this as nice a way as possible, although it's going to sound like I'm putting you down, Bobby, but I've seen it too much today. Can we stop with the money excuse for why certain teams are in the playoff? Because let's be clear. Who's tuning in? If this was your playoff, folks, if Georgia and Oregon were playing and Alabama and Michigan State were playing, is that really a cash cow? Are we really tuning into that? Well, I mean, we'll tune into it, but are we going to tune into it? Are you, as a college football fan, jacked about this? For those watching on Facebook and YouTube, are we jacked about this Final Four right here? And for those listening to radio the old-fashioned way, are you jacked about, man, if this was the final released poll, Georgia against Oregon, are you really jacked about that matchup? Are you really jacked about Alabama, Michigan State? The last time Michigan State was in the playoff, which, by the way, isn't it crazy that the only other Big Ten team to make the playoff outside of Ohio State is Michigan State, by the way, and that was a long time ago. That's not a sexy matchup. Folks, stop using the money excuse as to why teams get in. Alabama is not the number 2 team in the country because, money talks and they generate ratings. You know why they generate ratings? It's because they're good. You know why they're number 2? It's because they're good. The bad teams, if you will, I don't think Michigan State's that good. I think they deserve to be there. They've done what they're supposed to, but I don't think that they're that good. The gap between Alabama, the fact that that's your 2-3 matchup, Alabama, Michigan State, if this was the final poll, the talent gap is beyond wide. It's beyond wide. So that's not a money matchup. Why do we always do that? I think that's a lazy argument that, the playoff poll, it laid out the way it did because of money. That's why Cincinnati, no one's going to pay to watch Cincinnati. Let's be clear. Cincinnati is a fun, interesting storyline that more people would tune in to watch than Michigan State. Am I wrong? If Cincinnati was at number 3 and they were going up against number 2 Alabama, it would be appointment television for me. I think everyone, because here's what would happen. Everyone would be pumped to tune in to either cheer on the Bearcats to beat Alabama, because how cool would that be, right? And then you would have millions and millions of other viewers tuning in to watch Cincinnati get spanked so that everyone can do what we usually do with Notre Dame and other teams we believe shouldn't be in the playoff, laugh at them and say, ha, told you didn't deserve to be there. So Cincinnati would actually be the better moneymaker in this playoff format right here because of the storyline. But folks, the numbers justify this top 4. The strength of schedule. Alabama got the benefit of the doubt with their loss because they have the toughest schedule of anybody in the college football playoff field right now. Oregon got the benefit of the doubt. Oregon is at number 4. They lost to a bad team. They have the most impressive win of any team in the playoff field right now, but they also have the worst loss of all the teams in the playoff field right now. So why are they at number 4? Because of money? No, because of strength of schedule. Oregon has the second toughest schedule of all the teams in the college football playoff field right now. That's why they're in. Not because of money, not because they have cool, shiny, fluorescent highlighter Nike jerseys. It's because of strength of schedule, and they have the most impressive win. Oh, but they have a loss. Yes, they're forgiven for that loss because they have the second toughest schedule of anyone in the playoff field. So that justifies it. Michigan State, they have the 4th toughest schedule of all the teams in the college football playoff race right now. They're the only one I look at and say, I don't know if the committee got them right. You probably could have put Ohio State at 3, or you probably could have put Oregon at 3 and Ohio State at 4. That. You could have probably put Cincinnati, but Cincinnati and Ohio State, you want to know why they're not in? And by the way, for the person that said that the reason people don't want Cincinnati in is because of money. Well, Ohio State's not in, and Ohio State's money. So can we stop with this? Like, I think it was Don Roberts earlier today. He kept trying to say, don't act like money doesn't play a role in this. Money plays a role in everything technically, but at the end of the day, the committee is not sitting there saying, well, Oregon's pretty good, but I think more people would tune into Cincinnati and Alabama. No, they're using a criteria and they're sticking to it. And they proved it time and time again. So Ohio State and Cincinnati, the reason that they're sitting at 5 and 6 is because they have the 2 worst strength of schedules in all of football. Ohio State's strength of schedule is garbage. Ohio State has a strength of schedule of 74. Okay. Oklahoma has a strength of schedule of 69. So at least Ohio State has a SOS of 74, but they've literally blown everybody out of the water except for their loss to Oregon. So that's how they've been able to overcome the weak strength of schedule, because Ohio State has proven that, yes, our schedule is weak, but look, we kick everyone's ass. That's why they're there. The Bearcats have the 100th ranked strength of schedule. That's embarrassing. That's bad. And as I stated in the first hour of the show, Cincinnati, when they became the number 6 team in the country last night on that poll, they became the worst strength of scheduled ranked team in the history of the college football playoff. No team has ever been ranked in the top 6 with the strength of schedule as embarrassing as what the Bearcats is. But yet Bearcat fans are trying to convince you that, they're being punished, that they're being picked on. No, they're not. They're actually being rewarded, because despite having such a weak schedule, they did beat Notre Dame, and that's why they're at number 6. We should be higher. No, you shouldn't. You play crap teams, and you've needed 4 quarters to beat Tulane and Navy the last 2 weeks. You're lucky you're even at number 6. So, no, please stop with that whole line of, well, they're going to do what's best for ratings. Well, if they were going to do what's best for ratings, then Ohio State would be in the top 4. Period. If they were going to do what's best for ratings, they wouldn't have Michigan State in there. I promise you that much. I mean, Michigan State, come on. I know they had a highly rated game against Michigan, but a lot of those viewers came in on the back end when everyone started tweeting and talking about how great of a game it was. It was the game itself. 518-1410, 518-1410. Let's go to Clifford. Clifford, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Hey, what conference would Cincinnati have to get in to probably impress the committee more in the future? Because Cincinnati, like me and a guy, we had an argument the other day about glamour, glamour points. Like you said, if Cincinnati would have probably beat everybody hypothetically by 30 points in their conference, they'll probably still be in the spot they was.
Yep.
Now, in the number 3 spot at one time, or number something, wasn't they? At one time earlier before this new rankings came out.
Well, I mean, the Bearcats, they stayed, they're number 2, and that's why people are so bad about the AP ranking, because Cincinnati's number 2 in the AP ranking, and they're number 6 in the college football playoff poll. So the disparity there, but that's what I kept trying to tell people. Bearcat fans were pumping their chest about the AP poll, and I'm like, look, I know it looks cool seeing your team ranked at number 2, but that poll doesn't mean diddly squat, because the only poll that matters is the playoff poll, and unfortunately, that's the one that didn't tell them that they're as pretty as what the AP did.
Yeah, so what they're going to have to depend on, they're going to have to depend on some teams losing that's ahead of them, like maybe Georgia. But see, what I hate is that when they say like the regular season is like a 1-game playoff, it's not. It's only for teams like Alabama, Ohio State, not for teams like Cincinnati. If you're not a Power 5 team and you lose, there's no way you can get back in. Alabama could possibly get back in with 2 losses because they're a 5-power team. So that's what I hate when they say, like, how they used to say, like, the playoffs is a 1-game, like the regular season is a 1-game playoff. I used to hate that statement because it's not for teams that's not in the Power 5. Teams that's in the Power 5 can lose a game and bounce back and still get in there.
But do you see why, though? I mean, but like Alabama, when they have the toughest strength of schedule in all of football, it's justified though. Like you have more chances to lose. Cincinnati plays nobody week in and week out, so of course they're undefeated. So you know what I mean? Like I get what you're saying, but like it is justified.
Yeah, okay. But what conference do you think they need to get into? And I thank you for the call.
Thank you, and thanks, man. So the conference, look, them getting into the Big 12 is going to help drastically. But let's not act like they don't have a chance this year. They are not being kept out because they're not a Power 5 school. They're being kept out because of their strength of schedule, which by going to the Big 12, even if that'll be the weakest conference of all of them, their strength of schedule will drastically improve just by being in the Big 12. Just by being in the Big 12 alone, their schedule will be drastically better. So, like, I know West Virginia and these teams are not anything special, but West Virginia or Navy, who do you want to play? By replacing West Virginia or by replacing Navy with West Virginia, your strength of schedule just went up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get rid of Tulane, you play Iowa State. Guess what? Your strength of schedule, it just automatically went up. So, like, they're not victims here. The committee's not picking on them. The committee is actually being fair. I keep hearing people say, well, they're not being fair. They are being fair. Because what would not be fair is changing the rules for the Power Fives who actually have to play people week in and week out. Because are we going to, let's say 2 or 3 years from now when the Bearcats are in the Big 12, and let's say they're undefeated in the Big 12 when the first playoff poll comes out, and there's Coastal Carolina undefeated, do you think Bearcat fans will be sitting here saying, oh, come on, guys, this isn't fair. We need to let Coastal Carolina in. What if it comes down to that 4 seed? An undefeated Coastal Carolina, where they're at in their conference. And then you have, of course, Cincinnati in the Big 12, who's undefeated, and they're a question mark too. And people are like, well, we need to be fair to Coastal Carolina. Are Bearcat fans going to be like, yeah, that's true. We need to be fair to Coastal. No, you're all of a sudden going to be doing that, putting your chest out, wearing a Power 5, know your role, shut your mouth. Like, the hypocrisy from you guys is going to be so fun to watch over the coming years because you're trying to play this victim card right now that is not warranted. You have yourself to blame and your team only. You couldn't even kick Navy's ass. You couldn't kick Tulane's ass. But yet you're trying to convince me that we can hang with Georgia. Well, we hung with Georgia last year. That was last year. This is this year. Oh, we can hang with Alabama. Warm-ups. When warm-ups start and the score says 0-0 during warm-ups, that's as close as that game's going to be. You can't even destroy Navy. You need 4 quarters to beat Navy. And you want me to believe that you're as good as Alabama. You want me to believe you're as good as Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State, they played their worst game I've ever seen them play against a non-Power 5 school in Tulsa earlier. They still won by 21 points. That was a horrible game for Ohio State. They still put 40 points up on the board. They still won by 21. I'm not bragging about a win over Tulsa, but what I mean is even on Ohio State's worst day, they're still 3 possessions better than an American Conference team. I'm not bragging about beating the American Conference Tulsa team. I'm saying, to justify this, Cincinnati on their worst day needs 4 quarters to beat Navy. On one of their bad days, they need 4 quarters to beat Tulane. Ohio State on their worst day, I've never seen Ohio State look as poorly as they did against a non-Power 5 school than they did against Tulsa. On Ohio State's worst day, they still put up 40 points and they still won by 3 touchdowns. And you want me to believe that Cincinnati can compete with Ohio State? Maybe they can compete for a quarter, but they're not anyways, I don't want to get into that hypothetical game, but I'm just trying to tell you the way the committee looks at it is that way as well. Well, Ohio State, they didn't play well against Tulsa, but man, even on their worst day, they still put 40 points up and they still won by 3 touchdowns. Well, Cincinnati, let's not punish them for having a bad day against Navy, but even on their bad day, even on a bad day, they're only 7 points better than Navy. Oh, they have 2 weeks of bad football back-to-back. Yeah, they came away with wins, but you needed 4 quarters to be. Trust me. Let Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State and Michigan State and let Oregon, let those teams play Alabama or Oregon's schedule. They're sitting in the same spot you are. Undefeated, pumping their chest, and mad because no one's giving them respect. But it's justified. 518-1410. Bobby Sparks on Facebook says, I'm not mad about UC. Make no mistake about it. I don't think UC belongs in the playoff, Justin. And that's fine, Bobby. It's just when you brought up the money thing and the ratings, I don't think that's what the committee's doing. I know that's a conspiracy theory that, well, Alabama lost, but they put them at number 2 because it's ratings. No, they put Alabama at number 2 even with the loss because they have the toughest schedule of anybody else, which means they were more likely to pick up a loss than a team that has a strength of schedule of 100. Look, I'm not making fun of Cincinnati so bad. Ohio State's strength of schedule is embarrassing as well. But if Ohio State would have only won by 7 against Akron, if they only would have beat Maryland and Rutgers by maybe 13 points each, they wouldn't even be number 5, folks. I promise, Ohio State would be 9, 10, maybe not even in the top 10. But don't bring Ohio State into your crybaby story because at the end of the day, Ohio State, yeah, they're playing a lot of bad teams, but they're kicking their bad team's ass. Cincinnati, a 1-possession win over Tulsa, 4 quarters to beat Tulane. You're not on the same playing ground, but yet you say you're a victim, even though you are right there with Ohio State on the outside looking in. You still have a chance to make it, and you're sitting here saying that the committee screwed you. Even ESPN put out a dumb headline, the Cincinnati snub. They were not snubbed. They were actually given more love than they deserve being at number 6. 518-1410. Let's go to Ron. Ron in Kettering. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you doing this evening?
Good. Hey, I appreciate you being patient, man. Thank you. What do you have for us today?
That's what. Well, I'm going to put my voice in on, I hear you about the Cincinnati people hollering about the rankings. I'm with you 100%. I'd be thanking my stars that they're where they're at because, like you said, I mean, nobody's looking at the big picture. They're just looking at, we've not lost, and this is what we're doing, and this team lost. It's not that, and the committee has it right. They got it. I believe 100%. They got everything right on how they ranked everybody.
Agreed. I was shocked. I thought I was going to have a lot of complaints, but I don't. They held Oklahoma accountable. They had Cincinnati high. They gave them the benefit of the doubt. I think they have them perfect, although everyone else thinks that they got snubbed. Ohio State not being in, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them not being in because they stuck to, we can't put Ohio State above Oregon, who beat Ohio State. We can't put, Notre Dame above Cincinnati because they beat them. Like, we can't put Michigan above Michigan State because Michigan State won. I thought that they nailed it. I thought that they were very consistent throughout the whole process. I actually applaud them for it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did want to get your opinion on something. Did you get to see the Ohio State game?
Yeah, against who? This past weekend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a Buckeye fan. I've been that way. I'm an old school guy, but I've been a Buckeye fan forever. I will say that after watching them play Penn State, I don't know. Did you see it, or was I just imagining things? Did the defense, were they just playing too soft to give up that much yards up the middle on every pass? I thought I was seeing a replay throughout the whole game.
Ohio State
they were giving up those yards. Yeah.
With Kerry Combs' system, that system's been under attack all year, which is why Kerry Combs will not be back next year. Ohio State is not a perfect team, but to be fair, I don't think any team is. Like, this is the most flawed, and I don't mean this in a bad way for college football, but every team has flaws. No team is perfect. Every team is vulnerable. And Ohio State's defense, especially in the middle and the pass game, is not very good. I mean, Sean Clifford threw for 350 or 360 yards, but Sean Clifford moved the ball all up and down the field. He only had 1 touchdown. Ohio State actually shut down their run game. I think they only finished with like 25 or 30 total rushing yards on the night. Like, they didn't run the ball all over Ohio State. Sean Clifford passed for a lot of yards, but they only put, 1 touchdown up on the board through the pass game. Yeah. Look, they gave up 24 points against a very good Penn State offense when Sean Clifford's healthy. Sean Clifford looked healthy. Sean Clifford threw for 350-plus yards. Ohio State still, their quarterback throws for 300-plus yards. They get 160 yards total rushing, including 150 from Travion Henderson. I thought Ohio State looked as good as you can in a top showdown like that under the lights in prime time.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy they won. I mean, believe me, I was. But I just, like I said, it was just like watching replay on that, giving up that short yardage up that middle. I mean, it just was driving me crazy that they didn't go in at halftime and say, hey, let's stop that right up the middle passing, because I'm just afraid they're getting ready to play Michigan and Michigan State. I mean, they got Michigan State, and then the very next week they're playing Michigan. And for what I see, they better shut that down, because I know Michigan State runs the ball a lot, but they got some good quarterbacks who can throw the ball, and that if they leave that wide open again for them, that's not going to turn out well for Ohio State.
Here's why, and I agree, everything you said is accurate, but like the thing that I really like about Ohio State is their offense. They're always going to have a chance to win games no matter who the opponent is, even if the defense is playing bad, because I think they have a top 3 quarterback in the country. I think they have the best freshman running back in the country. I think, I just think that they have so much, they have the best receiving core in football. They have so much explosiveness offensively that I think that their strength outweighs their weakness. Their strength can still win them football games. When your weakness is a liability to where you could lose every week, that's a concern. But because of Ohio State's strength, even their liability doesn't scare me as much because of what they could do offensively. So I agree with you. Even if they get exposed in those games like Michigan State in the run game and stuff, Michigan State, they still have to stop Ohio State, and that's not easy to do either.
Exactly. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the call. I'll call back again, but thank you.
Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Take care. 518-1410. Caller, what's your name?
My name's Todd.
Todd, how are you, sir? You're on live. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Listen, I got a question, and I'm not being facetious or sarcastic. I
like facetious and I like sarcasm. So even if you are, I totally accept it.
Okay, cool. So my question is, who determines strength of schedule?
I'm glad you asked, because I have no damn idea.
Yeah, the reason I ask that, because, if you're determining the strength of schedule, let's say for Ohio State, and it's 74, it's a 74. Well, I mean, is that going off, Maryland and Purdue and Iowa and, in the past, Indiana?
I would assume so. I mean? And see, so that strength of schedule that I announced earlier in the show, that was strength of schedule through the 8-game point of the season. I also have the strength of schedule for the teams from week 9 through the end of the year. Ohio State has the third toughest schedule moving forward. So although they have had a weak schedule to this point, they're going to, so moving forward, in fact, so the toughest schedule moving forward is Michigan State. They're ranked, they have the 7th toughest schedule in football moving forward, but they have the toughest remaining schedule of the teams in the playoff picture. Alabama comes in at 2, Ohio State 3, Cincinnati comes in last again. They have the 81st, they're ranked 81st in strength of schedule for the remaining games coming up. But that's a good question. I'm not going to pretend or BS an answer of how they calculate it, but I know I've come across 3 different strength of schedule models that have Cincinnati ranging from 100th to 104 to 94, and Ohio State has ranged from 68 to 71 to 74 and 70. So they're all pretty consistent within those models, but I don't know how they calculate that, nor will I pretend or give you a BS answer. So
okay, fair enough. That was going to be my second part of the question, what you answered, which is, what will they determine the latter part of Ohio State's schedule? Because should Michigan win out and Michigan State win out, and Ohio State would go on to beat both of those, surely that's got to be one of the tougher last 4 games.
Yeah, listen to this. This is crazy. So for the remaining strength of schedule, 7th, 8th, 9th, 11th, and 12th all belongs to Michigan State, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Michigan. This is why I was saying earlier, people were trying to figure out, well, how are they justifying who gets in the playoff? I'm like, the metric this year the pattern is it's strength of schedule. They are writing that strength of schedule metric, which, by the way, I do believe is a slap in the face to the Bearcats, because they have not always made that the number one priority. Because Clemson's had the worst strength of schedule the last couple of years. They've been making it with playing nobody, and they just gave them the benefit of the doubt because they had Trevor Lawrence and Dabo Swinney. So they haven't always used that. This year, it's kind of convenient that the Bearcats have a legitimate argument of being in the 4. Now, all of a sudden, they're sticking to that strength of schedule metric. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I do. So. Very good. Well, thank you, Justin. I appreciate you taking the call. And I always listen to you on the way home from work, and you got some good knowledge, and I like listening to your take on things.
Thank you, Todd. And, the other half of the show who carries me, he's not here today, but I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you.
You got it, man. Take care.
518-1410, 518-1410. That's the number to call in and jump in on the conversation. Todd, thank you. I like hearing that. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I appreciate all of our listeners, too. I know, I come across as arrogant and rude and not respectful of other people's opinions, and that's because I don't know how to present myself any differently. But I promise you, deep down, I am beyond appreciative of all of you. So, Todd, thank you, and thank you to everyone listening. We'll step away for a few moments. The Cleveland Browns is going to Browns. Remember we got all offended by that last year? And Juju Smith-Schuster said that, and Claypool and those guys. I was so mad. Screw you. The Browns are not the Browns. The Browns are the new Browns. The Browns are winning in the playoffs or making their winning game. Sometimes it's like, last year I keep saying Cincinnati's a Cinderella team. The Dayton Flyers were a Cinderella team years ago. Maybe that's who the Browns were last year, and it breaks my heart. Maybe they were just a Cinderella team. Maybe this is who the Browns are. The Browns have a ginormous matchup this coming up Sunday with the Cincinnati Bengals. Never thought we'd be talking about this matchup with carrying so much weight on the outcome of the AFC playoffs. But you know what? The Browns season comes down to one game and one game only. They lose this Sunday, I'm giving up. Their season's done. But they win this Sunday, we're back, baby. We'll talk next. 518-1410. We'll talk OBJ when we come back.
From city streets to back roads. From road warrior to carpooler. There are some things you can always count on, like the reliability, durability, and power of DieHard, America's most trusted auto battery. No matter where your journey takes you, count on DieHard to get you started on the road ahead. Available at your local Advance Auto Parts and participating CarQuest stores.
You know a spot, but not just a spot, the spot. Actually, with the all-new Nissan Frontier, you know a bunch of them. But the key to these great spots? Being able to reach them in the first place. Your spot is out there. Find your Frontier in the all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier with standard 310 horsepower, advanced tech, and 281 pound-foot of torque.
Happy holidays don't just happen on their own. You make them happen with a little help from new appliances at the Home Depot. Because warm wishes won't roast that turkey. You'll want a new convection oven for that. An air fryer will help make the season light and delicious. And while you're at it, consider a new LG or Samsung fridge that's big enough to hold all kinds of Christmas cheer. Make the holidays yours with the season's best savings on top appliances at the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
If you need new roofing, siding, or gutters, skylights, or patio enclosures, if you're a homeowner or business and need someone you can trust, don't take a chance. Enhance with Lance. Lance Roofing and Siding in Fairborn has been satisfying customers since 1993 and hold an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Lance Roofing and Siding, 8460 Dayton Springfield Road in Fairborn. Call for a free estimate at 864-2722. That's 864-2722 or online at lanceroofing.com.
Are you involved with a school or charitable fundraiser that holds an auction, bid and buy booth, or a raffle to raise money? Many of the most popular items at auctions or booths are autographed sports memorabilia items. How can you get great items in your event? Call Adam Walter at Sports Investments. Sports Investments has a consignment program for fundraisers that has provided outstanding items. You select items that are proven sellers, including autographed pieces from Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Joey Votto, the Big Red Machine, the Bengals, the Browns, UC, XU, UK, NKU, Dayton, Louisville, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. Sports Investments consigns the items to your group at a highly discounted price. And when they sell, you keep the profit. You don't pay anything in advance. And if something doesn't sell, you simply return it. You'll enjoy the experience of dealing with the Walter family. Call them at 513-891-5000. Email Adam at sportsinvestments.com or visit them on Montgomery Road, right off I-275. Just 40 minutes from WING.
Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. Why let those dishes pile up? Dawn Dish Spray cleans them super fast. Just spray, wipe, and rinse. Baby's taking a nap. Clean those bottles and snap. Just spray, wipe, and rinse. Dawn Dish Spray, it's a spray for your dishes. Smoothie mess in a blender, clean and easy, can't bad. Just spray, wipe, and rinse. Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. How's it work again? Just spray, wipe, and rinse.
Some gifts say, I care about you. Some gifts say, I'm going to wow you. This year, one gift says both. The Oral-B IO. the electric toothbrush with the irresistible design that dentists will find irresistible for another reason. It improves oral health by delivering the wow of a professional clean feel at home every single day. This year, give the gift of wow. The Oral-B IO. Oral-B, brush like a pro.
ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
This afternoon will be partly cloudy, a high near 48. Tonight will also be partly cloudy, a low near 30. And tomorrow will be partly cloudy, a high near 48. I'm Pete Spivak for 1410 ESPN Radio.
Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street are huge supporters of the Dayton Flyers. Whether you're one of the 13,000 fans cheering on the Flyers at UD Arena or one of the hundreds of fans packed inside Tim's on game day, there is only two places that you can feel the passion of the Flyer faithful more than anywhere else. Timothy's Bar and Grill is also a sponsor of the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash in the afternoons and the Talking Out Loud Hour on Thursday nights with Sully. Timothy's Bar and Grill on Brown Street. Go Flyers.
Hey, here to tell you about my friends at Cordell Transportation. They're now hiring Class A CDL drivers and offering a $5,000 sign-on bonus. That's right, a $5,000 sign-on bonus, home daily, dedicated lanes, and no-touch freight. Brand new equipment as well, medical, dental, vision, and company-paid life insurance. Call Cody right now. Apply online at CordellTransportation.com. Cordell Transportation, driven to succeed.
Everyone loves shopping online. Well, I'm going to tell you what I tell my golf buddies when they buy clubs. Stop searching for coupon codes. Download Capital One Shopping to your computer. Capital One Shopping instantly searches for available coupon codes and automatically applies them at checkout. Plus, it's free, and you don't even need a Capital One card to use it. That's like hitting a hole in one without even trying. Capital One Shopping. It's kind of genius. What's in your wallet?
Savings and available coupons vary. At CDW, we get the right network makes remote locations seem less remote.
Great, because my data is lagging out here.
CDW can orchestrate the Aruba Edge Services platform, bringing computing closer to where data is created. It automates, unifies, and secures the edge, fixing problems before they impact your business, giving your network a sixth sense. Someone at the door?
Just a moose. He works here.
Aruba and IT orchestration by CDW. People who get it. Find out more at cdw.com/Aruba.
Some people think fall is the best time of the year. It may also be a great time to consider getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Brought to you by BioNTech and Pfizer.
There are many ways to catch the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash on 1410 ESPN Radio, weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. You can catch it live right here on 1410 Wing AM, or you can stream the show at wingam.com. But now we have another way that you can take in the show. You can now watch the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash live on ESPN Dayton's Facebook page. Listen, stream, watch. It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash, weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, we are back. I'm Justin Kinner hanging out with you here on a Wednesday. Make sure tomorrow you tune in to the Ryan Day Coaches Show from noon to 1. Of course, every Thursday you can catch the Ryan Day Coaches Show. Pretty soon we'll be transitioning into the Chris Holtman Collins Show as college basketball officially tips off. We got to hear Buckeyes basketball on the radio the other night. I mean, this is such an I love the overlap at this time of year. College basketball, college football, the NBA, the NFL. I mean, it's so much going on. For you hockey fans, the NHL's in full swing. The World Series just wrapped up. We now head into the offseason. How about the Reds trading Tucker Barnhart today? That was tough, man. He's a tough one to see go. But I do think it's time for Tyler Stevenson, to get an opportunity every day behind the plate and, of course, in the box. So we'll see. The Reds, you develop these guys for a reason, and we'll see what ends up happening as far as I'm concerned. But, there you go. So Aaron on Twitter, he tweets, he said, yo, when are we going to get some NBA segments? You see that Dallas-Miami game last night. Miami is for real. Man, for what, Aaron, I'm like a huge NBA fan. Kevin and I both are. I just feel like in this market, NBA doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong. It's your guys' show. I will be glad to talk some NBA. It's tough right now, though. You just had the World Series wrap up. Basketball's about to start, so we're kind of getting pumped for that. And then, of course, football, we're heading into the biggest time of year, November, with the playoff. Well, I mean, trust me, basketball, NBA stuff does pick up. I just feel like in this market, it doesn't move the needle, right? Like, I don't know. I have no problem talking about it. You know, as close to the NBA as we talked is LeBron's annoying behind yesterday, putting his nose in business that's not his. You know, he stepped in, and I'm sure that OBJ kind of gave LeBron the green light to put this tweet out there because LeBron's name carries a lot of weight. His tweets carry a lot of weight. It gets people talking, which is what OBJ wanted. You know, LeBron, you know, uses the hashtag free OBJ, you know, because that's LeBron's answer to everything. Leave Cleveland. But the difference is that OBJ is a part of the problem, that he's not the victim. Cleveland's not the victim either. They're also part of the problem. This is a victimless crime. It's a victimless crime in Cleveland. No blame for me to go around. I think it's everyone kind of carries a piece of the responsibility. So Kevin Stefanski and the Browns finally made a grown-up decision today by announcing that Odell Beckham Jr. will be sent home. He was, you know, he showed up to practice. He was ready to practice. The cojones on that guy to create the mess that he did yesterday. I mean, what a disaster. You had, you know, his Odell Beckham Jr.'s dad release videos. I mean, it was an edited video to show all the times that OBJ was left wide open and they did not get him the ball and all of this. That's on Baker Mayfield. If he's wide open, he's not getting him the ball. Now, I'm pretty sure not every, not every pass that Baker missed him on is Baker's fault, nor was it probably the priority to get him the ball right there. I mean, who knows? But the bottom line is, when you have a talent like OBJ, you need to do your best to kind of put him on the front burner and let him be the central part of the offense. But here's the problem. Nick Chubb is the main part of that offense. The offensive line in the run game of Nick Chubb and then Kareem Hunt. I think that the three most important players on the offense for the Browns, it's Nick Chubb, Baker Mayfield, Kareem Hunt. And I'm not just saying that because OBJ is not working out, but like, you know, that is the tough part of balancing the offense. Like, be honest, like A.J. Brown's really good for the Titans. They had Julio Jones, but who are we talking about every week? Talking about their running back, Derrick Henry. Like, when you have a premier running back, you know, I hear nobody ripping the Titans quarterback. No one says, man, he doesn't know how to use Julio Jones. He doesn't know how to use A.J. Brown. Now, to be fair, they get used. They are within the offense, but so is Jarvis Landry. You know, so is Donovan Peoples-Jones. Like, these guys are, like, the offense does flow. When healthy, the Browns offense is one of the most balanced offenses in the NFL. It's as balanced as the Titans. You know what I'm saying? So I have a hard time beating up on Baker Mayfield in this situation because it's not like he's a bum quarterback that doesn't have success throwing to any wide receiver. He has success throwing to Jarvis and Donovan Peoples-Jones. He has success throwing to his tight ends. He has success to Higgins. He doesn't have success to OBJ. So the national media, they make me want to puke sometimes with the takes that they have. Like, I now know what Bengals fans talk about. I apologize to Bengals fans. I'll take your side on this. When the national media paints the perception of the Bengals, they don't pay attention to crap. When people make the perception of the Browns, they don't pay attention to crap. I will actually, as critical as Bengals fans are of my Browns team, and as critical as I am of your Bengals team, I know more about your team than the national media does. And to be fair, when you rip my team and it, you know, I'm sensitive, it ticks me off. I'll give you this. You know more of what you're talking about than the national media with the Cleveland Browns. The national media and Papa Odell, Papa Odell is just being a protective father. So he's not doing what's best for the team. He's doing what's best for his son to get him out of there because he's tired of his son getting all the blame, which is rightfully so. His son is responsible. Odell Beckham Jr. is responsible, and rightfully so. He is to blame as well. But to sit here and paint this picture as if Baker's the problem, you know, the offense, like, that's the thing. There's too many examples of Baker having success without him. The other receivers are having success with Baker Mayfield. The Browns have won 11 games and made the playoffs without him. The Browns won in the playoffs without him. All of the most successful run that Cleveland has had in the Baker Mayfield era, it's all come without OBJ. Baker's most successful season outside of last year was his rookie season when Jarvis Landry was his best target and Higgins was there. And Chubb was there. The next year, you had OBJ. Now, Freddie Kitchens was to blame for that. Okay. But OBJ was still part of the problem there. They didn't have success with OBJ there. The next season starts, year number 3. Last year, Baker Mayfield, we're still asking those same questions. He looks a little flat offensively. They're not moving the ball up and down the field. OBJ goes out. They go on to win 11 games. Baker, in the second half of last season, the third most successful quarterback in the NFL last year in the second half of the season. You guys can get mad at me all you want. The numbers don't lie. You had Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes were the only 2 quarterbacks that had more passing yards and more passing touchdowns and a higher QBR than Baker Mayfield in games 9 through 16. Okay, that's it. No OBJ. So his rookie season, success. He breaks Peyton Manning's rookie touchdown record. He had 28 passing touchdowns, or 27. No rookie had ever thrown for that many touchdowns in a season until Justin Herbert shattered that last year. Good for him. Baker had success pre-OBJ. OBJ gets there, no success. OBJ goes out last year. Baker has his second most impressive run as a Cleveland Browns quarterback. No OBJ. They get to the playoffs without OBJ. They beat Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh without their head coach, with all the injuries, without OBJ. OBJ comes back. The Browns are Super Bowl contenders. They're a disaster. Injuries are part of that, no doubt. Even if you hate the Browns, put your hater cap off to the side. You do know the Browns were Super Bowl contenders because of their stars. They have not had all of their stars pretty much since week 2. They're a disaster with OBJ. OBJ's back. Browns are no good. The Browns had a chance to cut it to within 1 possession against the Cardinals, who everyone knows that game was it was a disaster because the Browns ended up getting blown out at the end of the day, and they were horrible in the first quarter. They buried themselves early. They had a chance to cut it to within a possession heading into the fourth quarter. OBJ drops it in the 5. But Baker gets the blame. OBJ's the problem. OBJ is gone now. Kevin Stefanski's, the Browns announced they sent him home today. That's a good thing. OBJ's the problem. The Browns are to blame for how they handled it. OBJ should have never been here for 2.5 years. In OBJ's defense, it should have never got to the boiling point. It got to the boiling point because the Browns let it get there. So I'm not mad at OBJ and his dad and LeBron for speaking out the way that they did yesterday. I'm mad at the Browns because it shouldn't have come to that point. Like when they say the Browns is the Browns is not the Browns because it didn't work with OBJ. The Browns is the Browns because they let OBJ become a distraction. Like, you have to handle him with kids' gloves. You have to know that although I've defended him from the time he got there, he was never a distraction. The lack of production became the distraction, but it wasn't the distraction that you guys try to paint him to be. He was not a distraction from the diva persona that you guys said he would be. He just wasn't. He was actually a very good teammate. He showed up to work. He didn't talk. You know, he did everything you asked of him except produce on the field. That was the distraction. That was the distraction we were not anticipating. It took a while to figure out whose fault it was, but I'm telling you, we can't sit here and act like, well, OBJ's numbers were so great before he got to Cleveland. Okay, and Cleveland numbers have been so much better without him on the field while he's in Cleveland. Stop moving the goalposts. OBJ's the problem. Not because he's bad. There's still something there. He will go on. He'll play somewhere else. He'll have success. The Browns will go on and have success. Move on. But the best thing that could have happened for the Browns today, it was the fact that they're without OBJ moving forward. Everyone's like, oh man, this sucks for the Browns because they're not going to have a shot to beat the Bengals this Sunday. I'd argue that this gives the Browns a little bit more life. Let's go to Sean. Sean, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I just went right to you, so you're live, just in case you didn't know that. But I'm assuming you're calling about this OBJ disaster in Cleveland.
I am not, and I hope that doesn't offend you, my friend. I'm actually calling in response to the last caller that you spoke to yesterday. I believe it was Shaw.
Oh, geez. Yeah. He irritates me, too. I'm just kidding, Shaw. I love you, but you also drive me nuts. Get him. Let me know what you got.
So I'm hopping in the car. I listen to you every day. You and Kev Nash make me laugh. And what I heard come out of that dude's mouth yesterday, I'll coin one of your popular phrases, made me want to puke. So nice. You asked him, what happened to your Michigan Wolverines on Saturday? Now, full disclosure, I myself, proud supporter and fan of the University of Michigan, all their athletic programs, and, equal amount sufferer of the last few years of football. Hell, a better part of my lifetime, in fact. You asked him what happened on Saturday, and he, much like a grand proportion of our fan base, took the easy, arrogant, and lazy way out. And his response to you was Harbaugh. I don't know what this fan base expects, but I feel like the majority of this fan base, including Mr. Shaw, lack perspective. Now, if we go back to when Coach Harbaugh was hired, I, like many of us in this fan base, expected grandiose things. Here comes the savior of the program. We expected another 10-year war with Urban Meyer and the Buckeyes. We expected dominance over Little Brother and East Lansing and the semi-rivalry with Notre Dame and everything else that goes on in and around this program. I don't think anybody really gave any thought to who Michigan is historically. You go back to Coach Schembechler, and while he had the second greatest winning percentage overall during his coaching tenure at the University of Michigan, his record in bowl games was well below 500. Produced a lot of Big Ten championships, and there's a lot of fanfare to be celebrated there. But ultimately, his record in bowl games was terrible, and he never delivered a national championship. In fact, from the time that he started as the head coach of the football program through where we are today, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know I'm not, there's only been one. That was in 1997, Coach Lloyd Carr, led by Charles Woodson, Brian Greasy, amazing team, amazing season, so on and so forth. So back to the subject. We lack perspective.
We have 90 seconds, by the way, not trying to rush you, but we are up, at the end of the 5 o'clock hour. But I can give you 2 more minutes.
So the program, historically, winning percentage right around 75%. Tick less if you want to be particular about it. Any idea you or anybody else who claims to be a Michigan fan in our market, any idea what Coach Harbaugh's winning percentage is with this football program during his time running it? Any idea?
I'll say 85%.
No, sir. It is a little bit below historical average. It's at 72. Okay? We're right just a tick under 72% is what he's winning. Not what we expected, but if you compare it to college football as a whole, during the time that he's been running the program, you know how many programs have a better winning percentage since he took over in 2015?
How many?
6. 6 teams in college football have a higher winning percentage, have won more games annually than the program that he's running. There have been failures. No question about it. There have been letdowns. This past Saturday, probably the second worst letdown during his tenure as head coach, surpassed only by the game in 2016. And the spot, as it's called in Michigan circles. But I don't know where people are coming from. It's tough to lose tough games, especially against rivals. And Michigan State, I think, we all, as fans of the University of Michigan have a problem of undervaluing that rivalry. They take it more seriously than anything. And there were factors in that game that Coach Harbaugh had nothing to do with when it came to taking that L. So the bottom line is, Shaw, I know you're listening. I understand where you're coming from, but your take was lazy. It was poorly informed, and I think you need to do better, brother. Go Blue.
Thank you for the call. And look, and Sean is a fan of that team up north. And I've heard that argument before about, what do you expect of Harbaugh? Harbaugh he's won, as you just heard, 70+% of his games and everything, which is higher than the college football average. And I get that, but the thing is I feel like you can give that speech and point out to all these bullet points of the wins of the program. I mean, trust me, every bullet point that caller Sean for that team up north just mentioned, that is all highlighted in bulletin board material and little bullet points on PowerPoint presentations that they take into these recruits' living rooms to sell the program. But the problem is that the selling point to these recruits is, man, we win 70% of our games. Only 6 other teams have done that more than what we have, and blah, 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 blah. That's super. But at the same time, like, is that what the standard is at Michigan? Is let's just win 70% of our games. As an Ohio State fan, here's why I hate Michigan. Not for the reasons that most Buckeye fans hate Michigan, and I'll hit the Buckeye music just for background. I hate Michigan for a lot of reasons, and none of them are for the reasons that a lot of you hate Michigan. I don't get all rah-rah about that rivalry because I just think that that's a storybook rivalry from back in the day. It's not a rivalry anymore. I know, at the end of the day, for you guys it is. It's not. It's not. Penn State is more of a rival to Ohio State than anything like that. Clemson is a rival to Ohio State. Alabama is a rival to Ohio State. Buckeye fans, I know I'm screaming into a wall on this. No one's going to listen. But if you have any respect for your program as a Buckeye fan, you need to stop giving Michigan the respect of putting them in the rivalry category. Because by putting them in that category, you are making them relevant. Because if you look at Michigan as a rival, that's the most interesting thing about them because they're not living up to their end of the bargain of helping lift the Big Ten. They bring it down. That team up north should have won that game this past weekend. And you're saying, oh, well, that's unfortunate. It's another letdown. It's always a letdown. That's who Harbaugh is. That's who Michigan is. I know that they win a lot of football games, but at the same time, Nick Saban wins a lot of football games. Ryan Day wins a lot of football games. Dabo wins a lot of football games. I mean, you look at the job that Mel Tucker's doing. He's winning a lot of football games, but there's substance to those wins. It's easy to beat up on the Rutgers and Marylands of the world, but they didn't put boosters and everything like that. They didn't bring you to Michigan to beat Maryland and Rutgers. They brought you to Michigan to beat Ohio State, to beat Michigan State. You can't even beat Michigan State. So, Buckeye fans, do me a favor. I know it's not popular. I don't have a good take on this in the eyes of most. But the only reason Michigan is still relevant to the eyes of most is because we've allowed them to be. Because we allow them to be a part of this game every year. Buckeye fans, you could do better. We could do better. This rivalry is so outdated, and it's nothing to me. To me, I don't get all warm inside for the team up north. And I was hoping that with the win against Michigan State this past Saturday, I was hoping that we were building to that. I was hoping that Ohio State, Michigan would mean something. But it's not. And that last caller, and Sean, you said nice things about the show and me, and I feel bad doing this. I appreciate you. But, I wish you expected more out of your program than just, well, we win 70% of our games. I'm telling you right now, I love Ryan Day. But if Ryan Day ever got to the point to where he was only winning 70% of the games and couldn't beat Michigan and couldn't make the playoffs and couldn't beat anyone of substance, I would not be all about Ryan Day. I would be embarrassed to have Ryan Day as my head coach. Ryan Day wins more than 70% of his games. In fact, he is still yet to lose a Big Ten game. Never lost in the Big Ten. Year 3. Never lost in the Big Ten. His only losses have come against Alabama and Clemson. Only losses against the 2 teams that have been the dynasty that have run the college football playoff since its inception back in 2014. So Michigan and your fans, and that was a nice soliloquy. It was a nice speech, and I respect that you are passionate about that, but man, that's a low bar. And that fan is a prime example, Buckeye fans, of why we need to stop respecting this rivalry because it's a damn embarrassment. We need to stop it. That is not a game of anything anymore. It's embarrassing. I feel like we're bullies. When we get to that Michigan game every year, we're like, we're going to kick their ass. Okay, yeah, I agree. You should. Because they are not Penn State. They're not even Michigan State. I'm more worried about Michigan State coming up here in a few weeks than I am that team up north. So, again, all of you, stop making that team relevant. You make them relevant by propping up the rivalry game. The game. It's not, my goodness, stop. The rivalry game we just won this past Saturday. That was the game. That's the game that goes under the lights. And I know Michigan doesn't go under the lights because it's not primetime. But let's say that tradition never existed, folks. Let's say that Michigan and Ohio State never had the tradition of not putting it under the lights. Like, let's say that that's a game capable of being put under the lights. Do you realize that matchup has been so boring that it would not even be a candidate to put under the lights? Now, you could say, well, they'll put it on the big noon kickoff, blah, blah, blah. It's always on the big noon kickoff. But, like, there's no prime time about that matchup anymore. There's a reason that every time they show highlights of that team up north in Ohio State, it's always Woody against Bo. It's always Urban against Harbaugh for the first year or two, and then it was like, oh, yeah, this isn't that. We were hoping it would be, and it wasn't. Michigan fans, like, I love that last caller. Sean, like, I appreciate you. But, man, you got to raise your standards a little bit. Like, Shaw's goofy as hell. Me and Shaw, we butt heads all the time, but, like, I feel like he's at least real in calling out his team. You got to be real. The standards at Michigan should be a lot better than what they are. The standards should not be, well, we can't beat Michigan State. We can't beat that team up north, but by golly, we're one of only 7 teams to win 70% of our football games. Buckeye fans, like Michigan fans should be embarrassed by that standard. Buckeye fans, you should be embarrassed that they have that standard, and you should be embarrassed that you actually tell people, can't wait for the game. Can't wait to play Michigan. You can't wait to play the team that doesn't give a rip about winning big games, that they just care about quantity instead of quality. That's who you love kind of wrestling around with. That's weird. Raise your standards a little bit. Raise your standards a little bit. My goodness, we are too good to be hyping up that team up north. That's a joke. And I don't get into the whole rivalry thing of bashing Michigan just to bash that team up north. And I don't put stupid little red X's on my M's. I don't do any of that. In fact, I'm done referring to them as the team up north. They're Michigan. They're just Michigan. I don't respect Michigan enough to block out the M. I don't fear them enough to not call them by their name. I don't fear them enough to not stop for gas as I drive through that state. I don't care. They are a non-factor. What did Tammy say? Use a non-MF factor? Like, they're just non-factor. Ay. I didn't mean to go on that long little rant, but it's like, are you kidding? This is why I get in arguments with people that I think the rivalry is embarrassing now. It's embarrassing. Ohio State, Michigan, that matchup is embarrassing. And I'm the only one that'll say that. Bobby Carpenter will kill me for saying that. Keith Byers will kill me for saying that. We have Jim Tressel on every year the week leading into Michigan. He'll kill me when I say it too. But in Jim Tressel's defense, it meant something when he was here. To Bobby Carpenter, it meant something when he played at Ohio State. To Keith Byers, it meant something when he played there. When you talk to Landers and these guys, and Landers will probably tell me I'm wrong, and that, and BB, he'll tell me I'm wrong, and he'll tell me it means something. Does it? I don't think it does. I don't think it means anything. How could it? They're not relevant. They're not a threat. They haven't beat Ohio State in how long now? Almost a decade? I mean, like, come on. Luke Fickell, the last time Michigan beat Ohio State, Luke Fickell was a no-name that nobody thought would ever get a legitimate head coaching job. Now, Luke Fickell's one of the best coaches in college football. That's how far we've come since the last time that team up north was relevant. Anyways, I'm done. Kev will be back tomorrow. We'll talk more about this OBJ thing. Sorry to get more into that. Browns Bengals this week. I'm excited. Ohio State has Nebraska this coming up Saturday, a noon kickoff, 10:30. Coverage begins right here on Dayton's home of the Buckeyes, 1410 Wing AM. Keep that in mind. Folks, have a great night. If you missed the show, it'll be made available on YouTube. Search ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. Search the show on Facebook. I'm always, begging people to like the show page because, every time I get 30 or 40 new people to like it, I end up pissing off half of you. You guys unfollow it. I mean, my goodness. You Bengals fans, you guys know what you did? When the Bengals beat the Ravens, you know that my show page, I got 100 new likes on my Facebook page, which, by the way, when you compare me to the bigger radio hosts out there, I don't have a following. That's fine. Not trying to be someone I'm not. But you know that I had 100 new followers follow the show page when the Bengals beat the Ravens? You know, when you guys embarrassed yourselves and lost to the Jets this past Sunday, did you know that 30 of you unfollowed the page because you were afraid of what I was going to say? Do you realize how cowardly that is? You could do better than that. If you could dish it, you got to take it. I dish it every day, and I get, ripped every day. I take it. I make it a point to not block people. Don't unfollow my page because you're mad about my take on your team. That's weak. That makes you a coward. Come on, you could do better than that. I don't block people on Facebook and Twitter. I let them come at me because I go at you guys I got to let you come at me. But don't unfollow the page. You followed it for a reason because you're interested in the show. You can't just say, if I'm a bad radio host because you don't like how my voice sounds or how I transition in and out of segments, that's fine. But don't tell me, don't unfollow it just because I said your team's bad. I love when people, he's a bad host. Oh, why? Why is he a bad host? Because he said the Bengals stink. So his opinion makes him a bad host? That doesn't make any sense. You guys crack me up. You always dictate whether a host is good or not on whether they tell you what you want to hear. You know, if you say I suck because my voice is annoying, I can respect that. It is annoying. I'm annoyed with me right now. I've been rambling. I need to be done by now. I've been rambling. We're actually trying to get something fixed. Something's not right now, so I'm stalling. That's what I'm doing. But I'm urging you in this free time to please go like the show page. Search the Justin Kinner Show page on Facebook. Give it a like. Give it a follow. Watch us every day from 3 to 6. Tell me how bad I am from 3 to 6. Tell me how much you love the show from 3 to 6. I appreciate all of you. I really do. I think we got it fixed now, so there you go. Have a great night. Go follow the show page. Stop unliking me when your team loses. That's Bush League. Okay? Face the consequences. Your team talks a lot of smack. I talk a lot of smack. I'm going to be talking a lot of smack tomorrow about the Browns and the Bengals. We finally got this OBJ thing put behind us. We can now focus on Baker Mayfield against Joe Burrow. We could focus on the Browns offense versus the Bengals offense, the defense versus the defense. The Battle of Ohio finally means something. I cannot wait. But the rules are you can't be cowards and unfollow the page when the Browns beat the Bengals on Sunday. And if the Bengals beat the Browns on Sunday, you better let me have it because that's the fun of this. Folks, have a great night. Love y'all. We'll do it again tomorrow. It's the Justin Kinner Show right here on 1410 ESPN Radio with Kev Nash. Shout out to our sponsors. Of course, Tim's on Brown Street, Love Orion Sports Medicine, OGW Energy Resources. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Whether you're vaccinated or not, it's important to know the symptoms of COVID and its variants. Fever is the leading sign of COVID and the flu, so make sure you use an accurate thermometer. Only the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer has been proven accurate with more than 100 clinical studies. Non-contact thermometers have